Welcome, everyone, to Davos Fingers, episode 146, A Debt, a Lute. This is Scatty, and with me, as always, is my buddy, Matt.
Hey, this episode today, we'll cover the chapters, chapter 46 through 52. Namely, that's the ever-changing wind through burning. In this episode, Kvothe struggles with finding his path at the university. He finds money to attend the university. He buys a lute that has absolutely nothing to do with the university. He learns sigildry to profit at the university, and he does battle at the university, but he can't overcome his friend's care at the university. But all of this with a little bit of a backdrop. It's slight in this episode, but it's there. Love's about to enter the story away from the university.
Yeah,
Buckle up.
Bast insists that there is a paucity of women in this story so far, and it's coming.
Where's the chicks?
Where are the women folk? And my own complaints as well. A little bit light on female representation in this book, but
a little light on female representation in this podcast.
Listen, don't remind me.
At least for the last 4 years.
Yep.
All of
Poor
that
little Alfred Brooke. Alfred Brooke.
All of this to say, celebrate it all. Celebrate Brooke, celebrate all this, because Scad, this month, August of 2023, I don't have the exact day on the top of my head, marks 9 years. 9 years. Your son just turned 9 years old. 9 years.
Yes.
That we have been doing Davos Fingers together.
Yeah, my little Pip turned 9 5 days ago from when we're recording. And it's always a reminder that I decided to start a podcast right after my second child was born, which was probably not the best idea.
You're still married.
But yeah, we've made it so far. Yeah, congratulations, Matt. 9 years.
Congratulations, buddy.
I can't imagine doing it with anybody else.
I mean, I can, but it's not a great imagining.
It's a horror show.
Yeah, it's not well. We just balance each other too well, buddy.
We do pretty good. Good. We're also alike enough. I remember we've had a few comments from people like, I can't tell you guys apart. I think we're alike enough that it works, and yet we argue just enough that there's a little bit of arguing in tension, but mostly we get along really well.
We get along very well. And
I don't know what I'd do without this podcast. So yeah. I mean, it's an outlet for me. I mean, I don't know if I would have fallen quite that far, but maybe. Maybe.
Maybe. Who knows? It is an outlet.
A butterfly flaps its wings, etc. Right? You don't know. You don't know. We don't know our lives.
You don't know.
Different circumstances.
Maybe we'd be Jay and Silent Bob if we didn't have the podcast.
So we shouldn't do it then. Maybe
because that sounds awesome.
Maybe we can still get there. Let's cancel it now.
Oh, yeah. I hear you. It's been a tremendous blessing.
It has. It has, absolutely.
We were actually, I told you
we
were
ourselves, but also the people we've met and everything else.
It's a whole family is built up around this thing, our little Kalisar.
Yeah.
Just beyond you and I. I was just telling we were over at my parents tonight. I was telling you a little bit about that before we hit record. And I was telling my parents that we were doing this tonight. And my dad was like, you still do that? You still do that?
Yeah.
I think he just thought that, like, my son's almost 40. No way is he still recording a podcast about some books that he's never heard of with his buddy.
It's true.
Yep. Still doing it, Pa.
And at about 40, 50, 60, 70% of our audience also would be surprised we're still doing it from the original days.
Yeah.
Given that we've switched to a new book. So speaking of those that are following us, we're still working through some of the details, but an opportunity to contribute to our next special episode will be coming everyone's way in the next several days, potentially. Actually, probably already came if we got on our horse before we actually release this episode, right? So look out for that. Look for a way to contribute. We can dream. Look for a way to contribute. It's going to be something. It's something fun. It's something different that the fandom has never done before that we think could be pretty unique and fun for everybody. Yep. And a little fingery, right?
Oh yeah, a little sassy.
Yeah, fun and not too serious. Yeah. So look for that. It's coming. I'm teasing it.
I like it when you tease. When you tease a coming.
Tell me, Matt, what do you got going on with your family these days?
School started, so we're just having a good time. But one exciting thing, Dashboard Confessional and the Counting Crows are on tour together right now. That's right. That's like Jon Snow's dream.
Jon Snow's
dream is Counting Crows and Dashboard Confessional.
Jon Snow, I feel like he'd go to that Dashboard Confessional and like the guy in that movie Rock Band. Was it Rock Band? What is it with Mark Wahlberg? Rockstar. Where he's singing in the front row and they pull him on stage and that's what would happen with John.
Yeah.
He'd have to get maybe like a few drinks in him or something, but like he'd be so into Dashboard Confessional, they'd bring him on stage.
Life changing. Or he'd just be down there just standing the whole time, just stoically with tears just running down his face.
And that would be enough.
Just coming down.
Yeah.
Anyways, my daughter, Leia has gotten really into Dashboard to my tremendous pleasure. My two boys like Counting Crows. My one son, Luke, who's 14 going on 48. He's such a crotchety little sucker. I love him to death. He loves Counting Crows. So we're going to make it a family event, man. It's going to be cool. We're all going to go see Counting Crows and Dashboard Confessional.
Man, that's interesting. So we've had debates, I'd say, in my family about going to concerts. There are some bands that they kind of like, that we like, that we've thought about going to. And I'm just I guess I'm the crotchety old guy. Yeah. I never know what to do with kids at concerts.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, when I see adults out with their kids at concerts, I'm like, good for you, way to get them out there. But when I think of myself, I feel like it would just be awkward, and would
you be worried that they were having fun? Is that part of it?
I want my kids to have fun.
Are they enjoying it?
If they earn it, I want my kids to have fun. If they earn it. Did they do what they were supposed to do today?
Do your chores.
No, I don't take it the wrong way, but I guess I'm a guy that's constantly worried about my kids in public wrecking other people's experiences.
Oh, okay.
Constantly. So like we stay at a hotel, right? We're on the road, we're traveling somewhere, we stay at a hotel. Mm-hmm. I'm like, shh, be quiet. There are people above and below and around, and they don't want to hear your noise. They're trying to sleep. They're doing their own thing. I'm that guy, right? Like I'm very worried about my family wrecking other people's experiences.
That's good. That's good to a degree.
To a degree. Aowen is more like they're at a hotel. They know what they got into. If they didn't want to be around some noise, they'd go do something else. And I hear it and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
That is very
But
true.
I'm still like, be quiet. It's too loud. To my credit, Mary and Pip they're crazy. I mean, the second they get into a hotel room, it's jumping from bed to bed, that's chasing each other around.
That's what kids are supposed to do in hotel rooms. That's how you test the beds, is by jumping from one to the other.
Better than other ways. Anyway, I'm glad you're taking to the concert. It's something we haven't done yet. My kids are younger than yours a little bit. But it's something we're looking at. We've almost done it a few times and then shied away. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, me too. Like, we're a music family. It's kind of just,
that's true.
It's a big part of what we do. So
that's true. Yeah.
How about you? Are you guys doing anything crazy?
Oh man. Well,
anything that will disturb the general populace by you being out there?
I hope not. My kids have Mary and Pip have both just this week joined what's called AAU basketball, which is actually I'm not even sure whether it's AAU level. It's a
Alternate
consistent.
Avenger University.
Sure. I don't, it's an acronym that I've used. My brother coached AAU for like 10 years. It's an acronym I just use without knowing what it means, to be honest.
Alistair, let us know. I'm not going to look it up.
Yeah, Amateur Athletic Union. No, that can't be it. Uh, anyway, they joined a more competitive. They've been playing rec basketball for a year and a half. They've
So
enjoyed
this is
it.
competitive more.
So it's more competitive. It's a team that will stick together rather than having to form new teams
yay.
every
I
time.
love those. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're excited about it. We're really excited. They're excited. We went to the first practice and they're just working on skills instead of, just playing tornado or whatever. The guy has a real focus on improving them. So I'm excited. They're excited. So that's good. My sister, I feel like I haven't name dropped Kelly in a while. If you are new to the podcast, I am the sibling of someone who's kind of like semi-famous. Kelly Thompson, comic book artist, comic book writer extraordinaire. Worked for Marvel. She's writing Birds of Prey currently for DC. She has her own self-published work that just came out via Image called The Cull, and I read it the other day, and it's amazing. It's a little sci-fi, but very character driven, like my sister's stuff always is. If you get to a comic book store, look up The Cull and grab a copy. It's a nice first issue. The art is insanely good. Matt DeLulis doing the art, and it's really good. So check that out. So that's about all that's going on in my family. School starting up, like you said.
Yeah. Image is it's kind of known for having that really sharp art back to the McFarlane days.
Yeah.
And being a little darker, which is fun.
Yeah. And the creator owned stuff is very interesting to see. I don't want to go into all the contract stuff with Marvel and DC and, contract work versus, doing your own creator own stuff.
Pitching and having them pick it up.
Yeah, exactly. You have to go through pitches to get their stories through with characters they own. This is all Kelly's stuff.
It's exciting,
it's entirely her concept. And so
that is so cool.
Yeah, it's really good to see. I mean, she's worked hard for it over the last decade and a half. And it's really cool to see. This. Yeah, it's really cool to see her get kind of her own control and to see what she's done with it, because sometimes people get control and it's bad product, but it's really good. It's a really great book. She had her first one last year called Black Cloak, which has been getting all sorts of accolades and recommendations from people. So check out Black Cloak too if you're around. It's also been published by Image. It's good. The art is different. It's by Meredith McLaren, who did her standalone book called Heart in a Box, which is also really good. If you can find Heart in a Box, it's an amazing story. Yep. Do you have that? That's a good one.
We do have that one.
It's a great story.
Yeah. Besides the connection that I have through you with Kelly, she's been a cool influence on my daughter, on Leia. So told you before, we've reached out to her, and she's been super gracious and just making Leia's day with signing books for her and communicating with her. And Leia really loved her Gem and the Holograms run that she did years and years ago. And
that was how she broke in, was with Gem.
Right. And, she loved Gem. She loved Hawkeye.
Oh, Hawkeye was amazing. That was a great run.
Yeah, she did some cool stuff with that. My daughter's got just a stack of Kelly stuff. Just
love to hear it.
In a special little shelf in her closet that is just all Kelly. So
we need more girls like Leia. So go buy Kelly Thompson's stuff. You can find her at any comic book store anywhere. Hawkeye, Captain Marvel,
Captain Marvel. Now. That's some of the stuff she has. Yep.
Stuff. Anyway, that's a really long pitch. We should get to our episode.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we probably should.
So we are spoiler free for the Kingkiller Chronicle episode you're about to listen to. That means that we will not spoil anything that's happening beyond the chapters we're covering in this book. We do spoil at the end of this episode for a section called Devi After Dark. So when we get there, we'll let you know. You can turn it off at that point if you don't want spoilers. But until then, listen easy. It's not. We're not going to spoil you.
Yeah. We love to hear from you guys too. We haven't heard from people too much lately.
No.
I hope you're liking this coverage. We're just gonna keep doing it. So
yeah, we love it. So
let us know what you think. We are davosfingers@gmail.com. People don't send emails anymore. Send us one. It'll make us happy.
Feels like email's a dead language.
It kind of
like,
is.
Like Sanskrit.
Even it's the Sanskrit of digital communication. Even at work, we don't use email all that often. It's a lot of it's like I am.
Yeah.
We're on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter @Davos Fingers, and check out our Patreon program. You can find us at patreon.com/Davos Fingers.
We're also now on Blue Sky too.
Oh yeah, we need to add that to our little thing.
Add to the notes here, but yeah, we're on Blue Sky.
At davosfingers.bksy
social
something.
Social whatever. You'll find us. Just type in Davos Fingers. I bet it comes up.
Yep.
Well, the ever-changing wind, Matt. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, chapter 46. Okay. It was by luck that Kvothe finally found Master Eladin, he who was never in his office on campus and actually didn't teach any real classes. Upon finding him, Kvothe made the pitch to him. I hope you'll accept me as a student, teach me whatever you think best. Did not go well. After Eladin sent him to look for a certain type of pine cone and then ditched him while he was out looking, Kvothe learned his first lesson. Eladin wanted to be left alone. But sure that Eladin was just testing his dedication and sincerity, Kvothe pressed doggedly on, eventually convincing Eladin to answer 3 questions. Answer me these questions 3, and then the other side you'll see. There you go, Chase. There's our Monty Python reference.
Mark it down, Chase.
Question 1. Why don't you want to teach me? Kvothe saw through Eladin's surface-level evasions to this question until Eladin relented and offered to show him why. They trekked through the forest until they came upon what looked like a nobleman's estate. Grandiose, beautiful gardens, but with a 10-foot iron fence surrounding the property, as well as a guarded gate. This was the university asylum, the rookery, the crockery, the place where they put the people that went a little crazy. One of the guards, who Eladin knew by name, estimated that there were currently 350 guests at the facility, and that it could allow for at least 150 more easily. Ignoring Kvothe's wonderings, careful not to ask an actual question, because remember, he's only got 2 left, about how much this must cost the university to even maintain, Eladin allowed Kvothe to follow him to visit a guest named Wynn. There was no one in the halls they walked through, but the faint sounds of moans, weepings, chattering, and screams were all present behind closed doors. Arriving at the guest's room in question, Eladin chided the guard for locking the guest in, commanding that Alder Wynn is free to come and go as he chooses. The guard seems penitent, viewing Eladin as an authority figure, as Eladin and Kvothe enter the room. Wynn was a pitiful figure indeed, seated on a floor in the corner, bone thin and naked but for bed sheets which he'd wrapped himself with. Kvothe also noticed a lead gilder around his neck, setting him apart as an arcanist. When questioned about his current condition on the floor, Wynn replies that he's worried about falling and the dangerous springs and slats on the bed. And no, he would not like to leave, he cries. As they leave Wynn, Eladin drives the object lesson home. Wynn knew what he was getting into when he became my Giller. You don't. You don't know anything about the university, about the risks involved. You think this place is a fairyland, a playground. It's not. Because of what they study and how they study it, well, not everyone has the fortitude for what the university teaches. So Kvothe and Eladin eventually made their way to Eladin's room, which is marked by a door made entirely of copper. Upon entering the well-furnished, spacious room with big windows and a lovely view, Kvothe feels a heavier air, thicker. Eladin is surprised Kvothe even noticed, admitting that not many do. He also picks up a chair and throws it at one of the windows, as if to get to the balcony outside, but it's the chair that breaks into pieces upon hitting the window. Kvothe then starts to notice more. The windows are somewhat magically reinforced, it looks like. And there's not a handle on the inside of the door. So it's then that Kvothe decides to use his second question. How did you get out of here? Eladin doesn't give exact details, but makes it clear that he did it by knowing the name of all things. As an object lesson, he deciphers the name of the wall, or the elements making up the wall, chants their name, and boom, a portion of wall big enough to drive a carriage through falls at Eladin's feet, turning to fine dust and leaving a hole open to the outside. Upon looking closer, it appears as if they tried to reinforce the wall with veins of copper, but even that could not stop Eladin. Through the hole, they step out onto the balcony and then out onto the roof itself. Yes, they're walking on the roof. There, Kvothe asks his third and final question. What do I have to do to study naming under you? Jump, Eladin replies. Jump off this roof. Well, figuring it to be another test, perhaps a leap of faith type thing, Kvothe immediately obeys and steps off of the 20-foot high roof. The look of pure astonishment on Eladin's face almost made it worth it, and for a moment, Kvothe felt like he was floating. He remembered part of a story as he fell. I'm going to read it. So Taborlin fell, but he did not despair, for he knew the name of the wind, and so the wind obeyed him. It cradled and caressed him. It bore him to the ground as gently as a puff of thistledown. It set him on his feet softly as a mother's kiss. But Kvothe wasn't floating. He hit the ground, not like a mother's kiss. He hit the ground hard, landing on his left arm, hitting his head, possibly breaking some ribs. But at least his back wasn't broken, and that was it. Eladin made it clear that anyone that stupid and volatile would be no student of his. And that's when Kvothe decided to start artificing, studying artificery. After all, why would he want to study under someone whose first set of lessons had left him with 3 broken ribs, a mild concussion, and a dislocated shoulder? End of chapter.
It's a fun one because we get to see more of Elodin, right? A character that has been a bit mysterious from the beginning. And so we get to kind of, well, not crawl into his head, but at least see how he operates. The Pinecone exercise is hilarious. And it makes you realize that this guy he's not just brilliant and capable of magical naming things. He's also sarcastic and funny and willing to screw with people, right?
Right.
And I love Elodin. I'm interested to see where he goes in this book, but I just think he's brilliant.
Brilliant is certainly a way to describe him.
What word would you use?
I don't know, quirky.
Yeah, he's a little nuts. I mean, so I had to look to confirm what you said in your summary about how he asks him to jump off this roof. He literally does tell him to jump off this roof. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions I had is like, did Kvothe misunderstand somehow? Because I'm reading it from his perspective, of course, so take it with a grain of salt, but it feels like it's a test. I'm with Kvothe. It feels like he really wants him to do it, and it's another test, I guess, of sanity or common sense. And Elodin won't teach anyone without any of that, I guess.
Right. It completely backfires on Kvothe. It got the exact opposite result of what he wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's great. He's so much fun to read. Taking off his shoes and leaving them at the front desk. So I didn't include this in my summary. So he could go sliding around. I guess we don't know if that's the exact reason he took off his shoes, but he's certainly, they make a point of talking about how he's sliding around.
Yeah.
Like,
step, step, slide.
Yeah.
Step, slide.
I imagine Scad's kids in the hotel lobby, if they're jumping on the beds in the hotel room, in the hotel lobby, they're sliding around.
They would be if I let them.
Yep. If you let them.
I'm not kidding. I wouldn't let them do that.
They start taking off your shoes.
You're like, bothering.
No.
Yeah. He's a bit of a mess. But also, like, part of me like thinks if he's at all sane and he's trying to weed out people that he thinks are serious. I mean, I'm sure you've met those people that just like want it too bad. It's like, look, you want it too bad. You can't see things realistically. You want this thing too badly. Take a step back. Mm-hmm. Come back to me when you will not jump off a damn roof for this, right? Sure. Because you're sacrificing too much if that's what you're willing to do.
Yeah. He's seen what happens to those people.
He was one of them, right?
Apparently. Yeah.
So, yeah, he knows firsthand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting, though, and maybe we'll get into this in Devi After Dark, the deference that is showed to him when he goes there. Yeah, as we will for sure. As the rumor shows, as the rumors state, he was there as a quote unquote guest at one point.
Yeah.
Fairly recently. Yet there are a couple instances where it talks about, the man at the gate guard scrambled to unlock the gate when Elodin asked. The guy guarding Wynn's door, the man stood a full head taller than Elodin. He was much bigger and stronger than him, but the blood drained from his face as the shoeless master glared at him.
Yeah.
There's a presence that Elodin has. I was going back to look at some of Elodin's first appearances. Prior to this, he's really only appeared with the other masters at the university, right? And I wanted to see some of the stuff that he was saying back then. And at Kvothe's interview, his very first interview, our first look at Elodin, he jumps in and says, "I too would ask some questions."
Yeah, his questions were great.
Yeah. And it says, when he spoke, everyone at the desk stirred slightly, then grew still, like leaves touched by the wind. "Master Namer," the chancellor said with equal parts deference and trepidation. Almost like he's worried what he's going to say. Also, like,
he's a wild
there's some
card.
Respect there. Yeah, there's some respect there too, though.
No, yeah.
It's fascinating, this hold that this quirky, brilliant guy seems to have on people.
Yeah. Did you watch Ted Lasso?
No.
In Ted Lasso,
shame.
I can't. Well, you can still do it. It's not like it's been removed. Scrubbed.
I will someday. I
don't want to spoil it too much, but in that show, they bring in a striker who's like world renowned, famous. Everyone kind of worships the ground he walks on. It's because he's really good. He's also really weird, extremely weird, right? And they don't really know how to react to him sometimes, but they hold him in such high esteem that it's just silence almost when he's around, and like, what's he going to do? And probably a little nervousness, but there's so much respect because he's so good. That's what I feel kind of with Elodin is everyone there knows how powerful he is and how strong he is. They also just know he's totally unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to do. So I can't wait, but also I kind of don't want to wait, to see, right?
Yeah. He's fascinating.
Yeah. What did you think of the number of guests in this rookery?
It's way too much, man.
350 with a capacity of 500. We've learned in this section at least that there are about 1,500 students at the university. We're talking about a number of people that kind of lose capacity to deal with the strains of the university of 1/3, of its current enrollment, which
it's
is
like we are allowing for 1/3 of our university to fall into this state of not being able to emotionally and mentally handle what is happening to them. Yeah, that's extremely worrisome.
We also learn, and we'll probably cover it in another section here, but we also learn that roughly 100 people leave, like graduate or quit the university every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so if 100 people are leaving every year and there's 500 in here, I don't know, it just feels like a big number. There's 5 times as many people in here as graduate successfully or leave the university every year. It's a lot. It's a big number. This happens to a lot of people. And we'll see there's concern from Kvothe's friends in this section or in this episode that they're worried it's going to happen to him. Yeah. Seems like they're worried it might happen to anybody.
That makes you sit back and go, okay, what's really going on here?
And Elodin says it's what we study, right? The things that they teach their minds to do to separate themselves and deal with, to separate the Alars, right? And think in a completely different way. It's taxing and it's very demanding. Right. And sometimes the brain just can't do it. I mean, I get tired doing my day job. I can't imagine trying to flip my brain into 2 places. And imagine you get good at that and you're like, oh yeah, I have the fishery later and I have the Medica now. Why don't I think about the fishery over here and think about the Medica now? And maybe they just live that way and it's just constantly a barrage on their brain. And yeah, you're just not used to it.
Yeah.
They don't go too deep into it, but it kind of makes sense to me.
It absolutely makes sense. No question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if a university that's been around that long, though, couldn't have developed some sort of pre-test or something like that to just kind of gauge your capacity to be able to handle something like this and say, no, this isn't for you before it gets to the point where you're institutionalizing, up to 500 people.
Or controls, some level of controls, you're, in college here in the US, they recommend they're you can take 12 to 15 credits, 18 maybe. You go beyond that and you're really probably going to hurt yourself, right? You probably can't handle it, right? I don't know if that's changed now. It's been, 20 plus years since I've been in college, but that was those were the numbers when I was there. And they're worried about it. It feels like the university could be okay, what's your schedule and what are you doing? And let's make sure you don't end up at the rookery. Right. It seems like they don't, they're more willing to pay for room for 500 than build a system to help with this.
Yeah, to actually help students succeed. More on that in a coming chapter from me, for sure.
Okay, good.
For sure.
Okay. Elodin, by the way, was there for 2 years. In this room, he says, right?
Right.
2 years of staring at this wall and not being able to see the air and not be able to breathe it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was in there for a while. Yeah. It's a little weird too. Alder Wynn is allowed to leave. Why wasn't Elodin allowed to leave? Is he too dangerous?
Right.
Is he?
Maybe someone like Alder Wynn wouldn't be allowed to leave until Elodin left, however he left.
Right. And now he's an activist.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
It could be. Yeah. Yeah. You got to treat all these people better.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to me as I look back. I mentioned that I went back and read how Elodin was reacting to Kvothe early on, at least on the outside. At one point it said Elodin, I believe this was when he was on the horns or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Elodin actually smiled at me, not just a perfunctory curling of the lips, but a warm, toothy grin.
Mm-hmm.
I'd forgotten how Elodin's light voice moved through the deep places in your chest when he spoke. He smiled happily at me again. And, but yet this is someone so there's this warmth to him, but then when Kvothe actually wants to dig in and learn something from this guy, he's very dismissive and wants to stop him. Any ideas of how that relationship works. He's kind of holding them at hand's length, but he also seems to want to demonstrate support, at least in front of these other masters. Any thoughts on what Elodin wants with Kvothe?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think he sees a little bit of himself, a lot probably of himself in Kvothe, sees a lot of potential, but also probably thinks it's too early for him to really engage. I mean, we might be expected to look at this chapter as a cautionary tale for Kvothe, right?
For sure.
Elodin is compared to him a little bit. You know, he was one of the youngest people admitted. He was the youngest chancellor ever named. We'll get to that later. You know, do we look at this like, okay, he seems crazy, but actually Elodin is just looking out for somebody that he sees might fall to the same, you know, the same temptations or weaknesses that he fell to, right?
Right.
And so he's actually just trying to protect the guy a little bit, encourage him, but not too much, right? He even says at one point that near the beginning of the chapter, he says something like, he asks him what his goal is or something, tells him something, and he says, oh, well, you should aim higher. And he's like, well, I wish to start naming under you. And he's not too high.
Yeah. Meet somewhere in the middle. I need you to go somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, somewhere in between. So I think he's trying to encourage him, but also
temperance.
Yeah, to also just ease up, buddy. You're too eager, you know?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing.
Slow down, you crazy child. So ambitious for a juvenile.
I don't know it. What is that?
It's only the best song by William Joel ever. Vienna.
I know who. Oh,
Vienna.
Okay.
Just hit me now with you saying
It's been a while.
Great song. Beautiful song.
Been a while since I listened to Vienna.
Go ahead.
No, I don't have much else here. I was going to ask maybe what you thought of the questions he asked. I thought they were pretty good.
Yeah.
It was a little game of chess they were playing, right? Trying to trick each other into answering and asking questions. I thought Kvothe's questions were pretty good. I thought that was another thing that kind of pointed us to look to kind of compare these two people. They're very good at these kind of mind games and very similar in that way.
They are very similar. That's a good point. The Kvothe talking about how he would try to ask a question, but not in a questiony way. Like, boy, I bet sure cost the university a lot of money to maintain this.
Yeah. I wonder how they afford this.
Yeah.
That's not a question. It's just a statement that I wonder it.
I wonder. That is the thing, like Perd Hapley from Parks and Recreation. The thing that I am wondering is this thing. Just finished that series with the kids. They loved it.
It's a good one. I spent some time last week after, was it Liz on Twitter was mentioning the
Bobby Newport.
The Bobby Newport stuff. I watched a clip. I watched like a series of clips with Bobby Newport.
Newport.
It's brilliant.
Has never worked a day in his life.
Yes.
Never. Another thing is, as an Edema Ruh, Kvothe is well aware of the hero's journey, right? He comes back to it a couple times in this chapter. Well, and usually in the stories, the hero has to do this. And it makes sense. He grew up in a troupe playing parts in these stories and everything, so that his mind constantly is going back to, well, what's happening in the stories? It kind of makes sense. He grew up in a family and in a lifestyle where he was immersed in these types of stories. The young man has to prove his dedication to the old hermit in the woods. What's funny is Elodin sees himself in a story too. When Kvothe asked him, how did you get out of here? He goes into story. Well, your hero did this, and starts talking about himself in the third person.
Yeah. And you wonder whether Elodin is playing into what he suspects Kvothe, how he suspects Kvothe views this. Like, you think it's magic and fairy tales. Okay, I'll tell it that way. Right. You get that sense that he's kind of making fun of him almost, right?
Yeah.
There are people that have drawn the conclusion like, no, Elodin is Taborlin, actually. Some people think that.
All right.
But I don't. But yeah, I mean, he plays into that with Kvothe, right?
He does. Yep. And we've talked a lot about how Rothfuss challenges those types of tropes and everything. It's fun to see him do it in a meta way here, where he's having the characters do the work for him. So it's very clever how that all works. And it also makes sense as to why Kvothe would always be constantly returning to this is the point in the story where the hero does this. So I need to follow suit. And he's learning really quickly that that's not how life works.
Yeah, it's also, it's the basis of his first question. Why don't you want to teach me, right?
You're the old hermit. You're supposed to want to teach me. Right. You're the Obi-Wan Kenobi.
This is the whole point. Like, of course we're telling this story. You're supposed to teach me stuff. And you're making go through all these questions. It must be a test. That sounds just like the story, right? Yeah.
I've already got my scarecrow and my tin man and my lion, my buddies, Will and Sim and those guys. You're supposed to be Glinda.
I don't know where Toto is, but he's coming along soon, I'm sure.
He's there.
Bless the rains down in Africa. No? Too far?
All right. There's some Davos After Dark stuff there, but I think that's all I got for now.
About copper.
About air pressure, maybe.
About Elodin himself, maybe.
Yeah.
Quite a bit, yeah.
All right. Stay tuned if you're into that kind of thing, listener.
Should we move to Barbs?
Let's move to Barbs.
It was to be an interesting rest of Kvothe's first term. Without access to the archives, Kvothe had lots of time on his hands. Time to study more in the Medica and work with Willem on his Ciaru, time to learn skills and earn a little side money at the Artificery under Kilvin, and time to develop true deep friendships with Will and Sim. And also time to develop a true enemy in Ambrose. He also spent time building up his reputation. In a matter of days, Kvothe remember, guys, it's been days. He's not been at the university for a long time at the start of this chapter. In a matter of days, Kvothe has been admitted to the Arcanum, had been whipped and not bled. He had embarrassed a master in his own class, and Elodin had apparently thrown him off a damn roof. These types of legends can build one's reputation into almost a suit of armor, and Kvothe did everything he could to encourage that. Even sometimes enlisting help from Basil to spread a few new ones, that he had demon blood within him, for instance. But the thing that added to his reputation the most was the ongoing feud with Ambrose. Defying a powerful noble's firstborn son just is not done here. But Kvothe would never back down. And for his part, Ambrose always came back for more. Kvothe was fearless in this respect. He couldn't fathom fearing Ambrose after dealing with all the true, real-time danger he actually faced in Tarbean, with dudes trying to knife him regularly. So Ambrose seemed harmless comparatively. But really, Kvothe admits he was a fool. End of chapter. It was a short one.
Just a short little one. We had a couple short ones this time.
We did several, yeah.
Wonder why he's a fool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, speculation might belong in Devi After Dark.
Yeah.
But I think, he's not as aware of the slow knife as he is, the immediate threat, right?
Oh, good point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ambrose has the ability to hurt him in the short term, but he really has a bigger ability to hurt him in the long term, right? In ways that are much more life impacting than some of the day-to-day stuff, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Day-to-day living was his life in Tarbean, right?
Still is. I mean, he's still struggling with money. Still,
that's true. It's so admirable for us to look at where Kvothe has come from. He's living he has lived a completely different life than I would dare say every single other student at the university. Obviously, I don't have the evidence to back that up, but I don't know how many other students at this university lived on the streets for 3 years before coming to the university.
Yeah. I mean, as evidence, no one had ever been given money to attend before. It was the first time, right? So that's evidence to your claim, right?
Sure. Good point. Thank you. Thank you for the
welcome.
support, Scad.
You know what? I try to help occasionally. I'm going to go to bed. You finish the episode yourself.
Good night. And now I am going to give my interpretation of the song Tonight by the Smashing Pumpkins.
Ooh, I mean, we'd probably gain listeners. Let's do it.
I don't know about that. There's a game, though, that's played at the university. There's a way of doing things, and Kvothe is learning that way the hard way. So it's fun to see him challenge that at every corner.
Yeah.
Especially with his reputation, and you can see why he does it. But you also look at it and go, no wonder you're struggling a little bit, Kvothe, because you're not playing the game. Yeah. And I respect the heck out of you for trying to change it. There's a lot of things wrong going on at the university, in my opinion. We've talked about at least one of them right now, which is the burnout that they almost seem to encourage in their students.
Yes.
But you're not playing the game. And sometimes to change the game, you got to play the game. He refuses to, and I'm interested to see how it turns out for him.
Yeah, he has almost a willing blind spot toward doing what's expected. It's almost like he wants to subvert every expectation. Sometimes he goes above and beyond that, right? But sometimes it's like, I don't care about that. I'm not doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And he doesn't, I mean, kind of similar to what I was saying about the Ambrose thing. He doesn't, I feel like one of the things he's really not, like we talk so much about how good he is at everything, right? But one thing he's really bad at is like long-term planning, right? Mm-hmm. Probably because he's used to worrying about getting shivved in the alley by a Coke bottle, right? But like he's pretty bad at future planning, at seeing what might be happening in the future and making plans for that. He's really good. Like in the moment, in like a split-second decision, he's pretty great. He's just inventive, intuitive, handles the situation very quickly, almost seems to never mess up. But if you try to make that guy make a budget, no.
Oh, the constant money concerns. It's so real world and it's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
No, to back up what you're saying, he says reckless bravery.
Yeah.
Reckless bravery.
Yeah.
Reckless can be defined as without a thought for tomorrow kind of thing, or not thinking ahead. So there is a fearlessness to it, but you have to qualify that with a bit reckless.
Yeah, for sure.
Something we love about him, but also slow down, you crazy child.
Yeah. He's an arrogant mess in some ways. Does it ever bother you how he always just talks about how the Rue are better than everyone and everything?
Whoa, it's the Rue.
Like, I almost want to call him a racist. He's like, you know what? Like, I know that's harsh, but like, he's like, well, it didn't matter what Ambrose did because I'm a Rue and I'm better than he is.
Right. Yeah.
And he doesn't talk about it like racial qualities. He just talks about it like, I was trained better. That's the life we led. So it's not really racism, I guess, but it just bothers me sometimes how elitist he is about the Rue.
He is,
and I love the Rue. It's like a dream life for me. I think that would be great, but I hate the way he talks about it sometimes.
Yeah. Hey, I think we brought it up in the episode about how I kind of love that Ambrose is a little into poetry on the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of sweet. And maybe it's just to get the girls, but hey, at least he's stretching that right brain muscle,
If he weren't molesting the girl he's reading it to at the time.
I'm definitely not excusing.
It would do a lot for his case. you know? Be like, oh, that's sweet. You know, he like left it on the porch with a little tulip or something.
Yeah, with a shot at making brownies or something. And
yeah, but no.
Okay, you got a point there.
He calls it a business partnership in order to more efficiently pursue our mutual interest of hating each other.
Yeah, have you ever had someone like that in your life? Maybe not hate is a strong word, but it's almost like you love not getting along with somebody. I care too much about what other people think about me to have one of those.
Yeah,
I hate people not liking me.
I have some of that. There is a line I get to where I'm just like, I don't care what. Well, actually, I don't care what a lot of people think of me. Some people a lot. Some people I care a great deal about what they think of me. But yeah, if you're an enemy, I really don't care. I got a few people kind of like that.
I like that.
This fantasy football guy that I just loathe because he made some.
Yeah, you told me about him.
Yeah,
you're like belligerent, like blatantly.
I told him. Well, I was going to say to his face, but it was via text in a group thread. He said something. Why are you always so negative about my trades and my comments? I said, it's because I don't like you.
Right.
And it was very aggressive. And he had rubbed me the wrong way several times. And yeah, I don't, it's not Ambrose Kvothe levels, but it's just a thing where we've kind of just grown to dislike each other. And I'm not really into pretending that that's not the case. I'd rather just call it what it is. And we can just still be on the chat and understand that we don't like each other and deal with it like adults.
Right.
So yes, I guess I have this guy
like that.
Yeah. Like on different teams where you're like, I'm going to play these guys once a season. And every time it's going to be messy.
And it's just going to, that guy's going to be standing in front of the net with me and I'm going to kind of cross-check him in the back. And
you're like, I kind of look forward to it a little bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, those are the fun ones.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Usually it's those guys
sports make us crazy.
The ones that think that, who knows, maybe this is the game that an NHL scout happens to be in Salt Lake City, Utah.
The guys that take it too seriously.
At 9:00 on a Thursday night. And he's going to be in the stands watching, and he's going to find me at 35 years old, and I'm going to finally get my shot.
It's Kvothe in the previous chapter. He wants it too bad.
It's so
wants
true.
It too bad.
And it's like, dude, take it easy, man. We've all got to go to work in the morning. Like, just stop.
Yeah. What is this worth it to you? What are you getting out of this?
We're paying money to do this, man. Like,
I got to admit, I'm kind of like that guy. I mean, not that I expect a scout to be in the stands, but like, it's been a long time now since I played anything in any competitive level, but when I did, there was I didn't ever hold, it was always very serious.
Oh yeah.
For me. Yeah. It wasn't fun. It was serious for me.
There is a certain amount of, it's an outlet, we go to work all day long. Stuff's crazy sometimes with kids and family, and we don't get a break. And this is our one time to just go and let all of that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that I am the calm, kind person that I am, 99% of the time, because I get to go out for an hour every week and cross-check guys in the back for a little bit,
Yeah.
But you do start to develop a certain, at least in hockey, there's like a certain sense of respect along with the aggressiveness, like there's just a way that you like, not last game, but the game before that, we were losing bad. We were losing like 6-1.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was really bad. And this guy from the other team is still ripping slap shots at our goalie from like 7 feet out from the goalie.
Yeah.
Is it against the rules? No. But is it something you do in a 6-1 game? No, it's also not, and
Interesting.
You just learn to
Is that
abide
because
by the
there's an
rules.
actual violent, like dangerous component of doing that action? Or is it because you're up enough, just pass the
It's
puck
up in
around?
yeah, like you're gonna a little bit of a violent component. You're gonna risk hurting maybe a player who
Yeah.
you'd hit or the goalie in a 6-1 game, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, but there's not really
there's not stakes at that point.
there's not a clear comparison in soccer, which is the only sport I really played competitively into adulthood. And competitively is,
Maybe
pretty vague.
maybe if
and
like you're up 6-1 in a soccer game, which is that's bad, right?
yeah,
Is the team that's up 6-1 really going to go after and slide tackle the guy coming down, cruising down the field, at that point?
I would, I would, but I was never, I was always a very clean player and a careful and controlled and
Within the
planned.
rules, sure. Yeah. I
But
guess even what I'm saying is sometimes even with the rules,
yeah,
there's like a certain respect
there's
level at that point.
but there's nothing disrespectful about slide tackling somebody. If you go cleats up, that's disrespectful at all times. Anyway, we don't need to dwell on it. I guess I would say I didn't.
Where did
I
this
didn't
start?
I guess I would say I didn't change the way I played based on the score almost ever.
Okay, and we
Almost
very
ever.
much do. Yeah,
But there isn't really. I mean, there's some, I guess, but there's no real risk of hurting someone just because you're still playing hard, right? Like it doesn't. You know what I mean?
right.
When I'm playing hard, I'm not usually risking anyone's injury, right?
And I think it's also the league that we play in too, of just like, we're all guys that are getting a little bit older. Like I said, we all pay money for this. We all got to go to work in the morning. Yeah. And it's all kind of to the point of like, am I really going to rub it in this guy's face? I like this guy. He's just like me, he's got a and am I really going to rip a slap shot and try to score a goal and make it 7-1 when he's already losing 6-1, you don't want to let off the gas because that's also disrespectful, when you're just like being a little condescending and patronizing, but you also don't want to rub it in their faces.
It's well known in like higher levels of soccer where you really have control to do this, that, you kind of stop pressing, you just kind of pass the ball around and the other team kind of understands too. And that happens for sure at higher levels. I don't know that I was ever at a skilled enough level where a team had the ability to just kind of pass the ball around like that. Yeah. So you were always kind of still playing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. How'd you like that one, Kalasar?
Yeah. We haven't talked sports in a while.
No, we haven't.
At least not to that degree.
Yeah. We're in the playoffs right now for my little hockey league. So.
Oh, I thought your league was over. I thought you told me.
It regular season.
Okay.
So we had our first playoff game last night and we won. So onward.
6-1. Is that the story you're telling?
No, 5-3. We won 5-3 that one.
That's good.
That's good. Yeah. Yours truly scored a goal. That does not happen often. That does not happen often. Yeah.
Defenseman getting up there.
And just like not very good at scoring goals either. So.
Did you just poke in a rebound or what happened?
I'm usually good for one a season. No, the puck was coming out of the zone and I swooped in and saved it, kept it in the zone. Yeah. And I like skated down low along the boards and passed it to a guy. And then I cut to the front of the net and he passed it back to me. And I just tucked it in.
Just slotted it through.
It was a pretty goal. It was a pretty goal.
All right. That's good.
By Matt Thacker standards. So
yes.
Got my one for the year.
Good for you.
Yeah,
just got it in the playoffs.
Yep, game one of the playoffs.
Shall we move to interlude?
Yeah, we do have a little interlude here, and I've got it. I wrote this one on my iPad while I was getting my oil changed.
Oh, here we go.
And no, that's not a metaphor for something else. That would be cool, though. I'm sitting there writing summaries.
It could have been a 2-for-1.
All right. This is an interlude. So we're stepping away from the university back to the story that we started out on at the inn, right? A silence of a different kind. Scad, Bast wasn't afraid of much, but he positively feared when Kvothe went silent. Not the ordinary silence that comes from a simple absence of things moving about and making noise. Bast feared the deep, weary silence that gathered around his master at times like an invisible shroud. Dread seeped in as Bast counted the breaths that passed as Kvothe said nothing. 15 breaths, 16, 17, until finally, to Bast's relief, Kvothe spoke up, admitting that he knew not how to begin telling the next part of his story. Bast suggested Kvothe simply start with what's most important. But what is most important? Kvothe asks, my magic or my music? My triumphs or my follies? Who knows? After a dinner break, Kvothe was ready. And he would start by talking about her. Not just a woman. The woman. I've told stories in the past, painted pictures with words, told hard lies and harder truths. Once, Kvothe says, I sang colors to a blind man. Sang colors to a blind man. 7 hours I played, but at the end he said he saw them, green and red and gold. That, I think, was easier than this. Trying to make you understand her with nothing more than words. You've never seen her, never heard her voice. You cannot know. But still, he said, I will try. And that's the end of the interlude.
Well, you know what Yoda says. Do or do not. There is no try.
So get to it, pal.
So let's hear it. Yeah, these interludes are interesting. So, this story is being told by the larger story, the story of his past is being told by him, right? To chronicler, and chroniclers taking it down and writing it down as, his supposed truth. These interludes, though, are not really from his perspective. They're, like a third person narrative, like an overseeing narrator kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that we get this piece about Bast's fears of his master, Bast's fear of his master's silence. The narrator could tell us why, he's not really afraid of the silence. He's afraid of what the silence means, right? To him, that silence is indicative of something. It's reminding him that his master isn't what he used to be, or I don't think we really even know exactly, right? But it's something more than just the silence. The silence is a reminder of what else is amiss, right? And you wonder whether Kvothe feels it too, right? We only get the narrator telling us how Bast feels.
Happening.
But as it's happening, does Kvothe also feel shaken by it? Of how he's changed and what that silence means and how pensive and reflective and almost stuck he seems to be?
Stuck is a good word.
Because we get the rest of the story from his perspective besides these spots at the inn, and it would maybe be the most interesting point to have his perspective. What's going on? And, I'm sure it's by design, Pat, I get it. But as a reader, what's going on in there? Right? Why are you silent for 16 seconds? Mm-hmm. What's going through your head that, do you feel like a shadow of yourself? Is it coming back to you? Are you worried about it coming back to you because you're afraid what it will do? These little interludes, I love them, but they bother me so much in some way because I don't know. Probably if I had another book in the last 5 years, I wouldn't be so bothered. What's happening? What are they afraid of about this silence?
About the silence, yeah.
The silence in itself isn't scary. It's what the silence portends that means something.
Right. What the silence portends. I like that. I remembered the silence of 3 parts. Mm-hmm. One of your favorite pieces of writing ever.
I love it. Yeah.
The prologue of this book. And the third silence. Not an easy thing to notice, Kvothe says in the prologue. It was in the weight of the black stone hearth that held the heat of a long, dead fire. The slow back and forth of a white linen cloth rubbing along the grain of the bar. And it was in the hands of the man who stood there polishing a stretch of mahogany that had already gleamed in the lamplight. Is Bast afraid? You know, you look at the black stone hearth of a long dead fire, right? Think of that with Kvothe, where he's at when he's at the inn, polishing wood that's already polished, just for the routine of it all, right?
Yeah.
So I really like that you said the word stuck.
Stuck. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but the question is, with the silence, it feels like the silence is more reflection, right? Kvothe is thinking about something. Bast wants to protect Kvothe.
Yeah.
So does Bast want that third silence? He is someone who wants to protect Kvothe. Is he want that? He wants him to be in a routine where he's polishing wood all day, because at least he's not out risking his life and maybe risking the life of others. Does he want him to stay there? And so if he sees him stopping and thinking, is he like, oh no, is he snapping out of it?
Oh, I see.
Oh boy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Oh crap. No, we got to go polish that table. Remember, you got chores to do. Like, stop, calm down.
Yeah. I like the way you put that. And I like that you went back to the silence of three parts, because I think some of the answer of some of the things I was talking about may be in there. But you didn't go to the last line of that, which is maybe my favorite part of what I think Bast is actually afraid of, which is similar, but also maybe opposite to what you're saying. I'll get there. It was the patient cut flower sound of a man who is waiting to die. And it took me a long time, like several reads of this. I'm like, cut flower? What is it? What does a cut flower sound? Like the shears? Like what does that mean? And it's the fact that the flower, like if you cut it, it's dead, but it's still clinging to life. It's still vibrant. It's still pretty. It's still colorful.
You could put it in a glass of water and it might last
for a little while,
few days. Yeah.
But it's fucking dead. It's dead. It's not coming back.
There's no hope for it.
It's dead.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe anytime, I think Bast fears that he's gone and won't come back, and that actually he does want him out there and doing stuff, not just safe and tending the inn. He wants him back to who he used to be. But what he senses in the silence is this de-evolution towards this patient cut flower sound of a man who's just waiting to die. I'm just here living out my last days.
Right.
And anytime he hears silence, he's like, there's nothing moving. There's nothing happening. There's no change to get him back to who he was. He's just waiting to die, polishing that bar over and over again until like his arm stops moving and he passes out and dies. Right? That's what I think Bast is really afraid of. But I'd love to know whether Kvothe feels it too. Or whether because he's living it, he doesn't feel it that way. He's just like, yeah, just living and doing my thing and polishing the bar. And
it's pretty self-aware.
Yeah,
I like to think he does
most of the time. Yeah.
Goo Goo Dolls, young man sitting in the old man's bar waiting for his turn to die. I just thought of that. How come we didn't think of that sooner? It's perfect for this. See the young man sitting in the old man's bar.
I love that album.
For his turn to die.
Mm-hmm.
Broadway. Great song.
Broadway is a good song.
Overplayed in its day, but now when you go back and listen to it, it's like, this song is a total banger.
It's a good one. Yeah, that whole album actually is pretty good.
Really good album.
I can't tell you what. Dizzy Up the Girl? So
Dizzy Up the Girl. Yeah. You got Black Balloon on there. You got Iris on there.
Yeah, there's
some good tunes.
It's been a few years probably since I listened to it all the way through, but that's a good album.
We should pop that on. Yeah.
Right now while we talk.
You know what? Put it on the background.
Probably get listeners.
That won't get us in trouble.
Yeah. You have been flagged. You have been fined 5 credits. No,
but I hear what you're saying. I can't completely get behind it because I'm just back to thinking about Bast, you know, how he was incensed that Kvothe put the sword above the bar, you know, like, he's very protective of him. So I wonder if he wants to meet him somewhere in the middle. Maybe that's where the answer lies. He doesn't want him to sit there polishing the same piece of wood and just waste the rest of his life. What a waste that would be, a life of such a great man, but also not out there, killing kings or whatever happened, just like,
yeah,
let's just zero in on something in the middle. Like Eladin says, oh, that's an interesting callback, that maybe we need to temper this somehow.
Yeah, a little bit.
Kvothe.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I go back to the fact that when we had one of these interludes where Bast actually confronts the chronicler and is like, don't you freaking upset him. He needs to come out of his shell. And he's the one that actually invited the chronicler here, right? Expose the fact that Kvothe is here at this bar, at this inn. I think he wants him, I don't know that he wants him exposed, but he wants him to remember who he was. And whether that means going out and killing kings or not, yeah, probably not. He probably doesn't want him fighting angels. But I think he believes there's still more story and fight in Kvothe, and maybe that he's got a destiny that, being part of the Fey realm, he understands that we don't know yet, right?
Than just waiting in a bar to die. Yeah.
And if he's just sitting like an old man, even though he's 24 or something, waiting for his turn to die like a cut flower, that's bad to Bast. I think that's what he feared. That's what he thinks the silence might lead to, is just more dead moments, more wasted time, more wasted moments where he's just striding toward death. And the acceptance, right, in Kvothe's mind, in Coate's mind, that's where he's headed, regardless, right?
Yeah, I'm willing to go with that somewhere in the middle. Like, he doesn't necessarily want Kvothe to go back to what he was doing before, but go back to,
he's got to do something.
Destiny. Yeah.
He's not a cut flower.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So, and who knows if what Bast wants him to do is the right thing.
Yeah, we don't.
Something.
I don't think so, but Bast could absolutely just be a villain, right? We don't know.
Right.
But there's a short story called The Lightning Tree. Lightning Tree? It's called The Lightning Tree.
Mm-hmm.
But I only read once. I should go back and read it again, about Bast. And you get the impression in that he's not a villain. But it could just be a one-off story of a villain being a nice guy for an afternoon, right? So I should go read that again. What do you think about this girl? What do you think about how, is he overdoing it? I couldn't possibly explain to you with words, simple words, how wonderful this creature is.
More than words.
No, we're having
a good music episode, dude.
Yeah.
We are on point with our music episodes tonight.
Yeah.
With our music call outs. Yeah. It feels a little like, okay, come on, Kvothe.
Come on. Yeah. Anytime he waxes about...
Okay, you little color singer, you. Calm down.
Anytime he waxes about how beautiful the women in his life are, I think about Bast being like, her nose wasn't perfect. She was fine. He's like, I saw her once and she's fine, but she's not, every time I think of that.
He's like standing behind Kvothe looking at the chronicler, and he's like,
it's like, it's just, like.
The chronicler's just like,
yeah. I don't have much else. I don't have much else. Do you have much else?
No, I'm ready to go on.
I am ready for more women. I'll say that. I agree with Bast in that perspective.
Pretty women.
Well, women of any kind.
Yep.
Nature of Wild Things, chapter 49. Were Kvothe never required to cross the river, seeking services found in Imra, but not at the university, he would have never found this woman who was waiting for her cue to enter the stage, as we mentioned in the last chapter. And so that is how he must continue with on the storytelling, with his motivation for spending time away from the university. As is frequently the case, the answer is money. But it's a little more complicated than that, and let's dive in. Kvothe finished his first term with 3 silver talents and a single jot. Would that be enough money to pay his way into a second term? Well, tuitions are set, as we've seen previously, after interviews. Despite studying as hard as he could, Several of the masters were clearly against him after the up and down first term that he had, and his tuition was set at 3 talents, 9 jots, and 7 drabs, about 8 more jots than he had. With virtually no time to obtain the additional money, nothing to sell of any value, and no one willing to lend him money, he has very few options. One is to borrow from his friends, but Kvothe valued his friendships too much and had too much pride to ask Will and Sim for help. He turned to the only other place he could, a loan shark, what they call a galet in this book. Finding them was the hard part, but after spending some time in a few seedy bars and inquiring in a pawn shop, he found what he needed in Imra. And that's the end of the chapter. Another short one. You ever borrow from a friend, Matt?
Yeah.
You ever loan to a friend?
Yeah. I think I've done both.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
In substantial amount? I mean, I'm not asking you to like give me dollar amounts, but like substantial amounts?
I don't know I've ever done more than, not substantial. Nothing substantial. Yeah. How about you? Anything substantial?
It's all relative, right? A little bit, but I kind of I agree with Kvothe, right? Like there's no better way to to burn a friendship than doing it. And so when I do it, I tend to think of it more like gifts. And if I get it back, then I get it back. And I don't think I've ever borrowed. I've accepted gifts though, where I'm like, that's really generous. I don't know how to repay you exactly. Not in the thousands and thousands of dollars range, but people buying me things or like, I'll cover this for you, or things like that. I've had that happen. Yeah. But I've only loaned substantial amounts. I haven't borrowed. I don't think I could. I'd feel weird about it. But you know what? Need is a tremendous motivator, right? And I've been reasonably comfortable for, I've been very lucky in my life.
I've never been needy.
Right.
Yeah. Like Jim Gaffigan said, I don't remember the last time I was hungry.
I'm always hungry, but I've never been like hungry.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, very fortunate in that way. Yeah, it's like, it's interesting because I'm scared to death to ask for help because of that pressure I put on myself to pay it back, not ruin the friendship or anything. Yeah. But when it comes to my friends coming to me for help, please do. Like, totally. And I want to because I like you. It's not because I have like, I'm going to charge you 50% interest or anything like it's going to happen here in a second. I do it because I like you. Yeah. And I'm the same.
Yeah, way. No. Yeah, I don't do interest. It's just like pay me back when you can, and but in my head, I'm still like, if they don't, they don't, and I'm not going to let that affect.
And you got to be prepared for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not going to let it affect my friendship. Like, that's where I came to with it is, just think of them as gifts, and if you get them back, then great.
And that goes beyond money, right? Like,
sure,
we've had to tell our kids that too. Like, you know what? We're going to go and do this for this person. And there's a chance that they may not even really say thank you. And we have to be okay with that.
Yeah. You're part of a faith that gives, regularly, like you're required to, right? I know there are exceptions, but you can make exceptions, right? But in general, it's pretty much you're meant to give, right? And that goes a long way. I don't give to anything like that, right? So I actually have within me some guilt about how I don't give to anything. And so it's being able to help a friend is nice in some way, assuages some of my guilt sometimes.
Right.
Very complicated human emotions with all that kind of stuff.
There is very complicated human emotions.
Yeah.
There's a bit of you want to be noticed and you want to be like seen for the thought you put into something or whatever.
Yeah.
But
like hovering over the anonymous button when you're donating something, it's like, do I want it to be anonymous?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
I should want it to be anonymous. I really should. I'll pretend I forgot to click anonymous.
I want them to
know I care.
Right.
Which isn't that terrible of an emotion. It's
not.
It's more like I don't want the reverse. I don't want them to think I don't care.
That you don't care. Yeah.
Right. And so, anyway.
But is that a bit selfish too, even? Are you doing that for them? You doing that for you?
You're doing it for you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's some positives for them, probably. They might get some solace of knowing.
Yeah, like, Scott cares about me. A
confirmation of how they thought you felt about them or something. But even then, putting a dollar value on that it's messy. It's all very complicated human emotion stuff. Money. If only we were just hunter-gatherers, Matt.
It'd be so much easier.
Not on my bad hip.
Much easier. Then you might know what hunger was.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, this university is so freaking screwed up, Scad.
Tell me about it, man.
Your next term's tuition was based on your performance.
Mm-hmm.
You're just set up to. Just feels like you're set up to fail. Well, no, let me put it this way. It's elitist. It's meant to keep the rich people there paying money. And if you're not, sorry, there's no chance at someone moving beyond their station unless their station in life, unless they are exceptionally, recklessly motivated like Kvothe, which one Kvothe comes along in a million. There's simply no way for a kid, and it's a reflection of society today, like a lot of this stuff. If you're a kid from, lower income parts of major cities, your chances of going to college and succeeding there are very slim.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing.
Stacked against you for sure.
Yeah. And it's the same thing here.
Yeah.
You better get here. And you got to pay to get in, first of all. Obviously, Kvothe didn't. And then, in addition to finding ways to feed yourself and house yourself, you better do good enough that we don't charge you too much. And by the way, what we charge you is completely subjective. It's not based on any rubric or anything. It's just what we decide.
Actually, the biggest problem with is that it's not based on how you do in the interviews. They say it is. But really, they look at your clothes and they're like, oh, well, you can afford 8 talents instead of 5. I'll charge you 8. It doesn't matter really they say it matters on the interviews, but it's really about how you did in the last semester and what the teachers think of you and how much they think you can afford. It's like going to a car lot. It's like, well, what can we get out of this guy?
Yep.
If it were really just based on performance, that would be more equitable, right? You've got the socioeconomic, comparing it to our world, issues of we don't start on a level playing field, and so it's not a fair comparison of performance, right? And so that has to be adjusted for in our world for sure. This is a different world, certainly, though the rich kids have libraries at home and the other kids don't, so they have a leg up too. It's not fair. Any way you slice it, it's not fair. I feel like part of me is like, at least they punish the rich kids. Right. I mean, they still look at Kvothe and they're like, even though 3 of the 8 of us hate you, we'll still get you in for 3 talents instead of 8 or 12 or 20. Right. So I think it could be less fair. It's more fair than it could be, but it's still not good. Yeah.
And that's because Kvothe is, like I said,
brilliant,
a tremendous exception.
But also because they know he can't pay. So they're like, oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, he says in this chapter that Branjor asked him, or sorry, it was Hem asked him questions that didn't have answers. He asked him questions that had multiple answers. There was no way he could get them right.
Yep.
Right. And so that in and of itself tells you it's not really about how you do in the interview. It's about who's interviewing and interviewing you and what they think of you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's totally garbage.
And it comes down to just, I don't know, pressure or stress or the mental capacity to handle what's going on at school. He says,
Yeah,
of
that's
his
true.
fellow students. They had families paying their tuition, granting them allowances to cover their living expenses. They had reputable names they could borrow against in a pinch. They had possessions they could pawn or sell. If worse came to worse, they had homes to return to. Safety nets galore, so you don't have to worry about falling and breaking your neck.
Yeah, that's the biggest difference. The margin for error is 0 for him.
Right. And that pressure and that stress, as we see, does start to have an effect on him.
Absolutely. Even though he handles stress pretty well, just the realistic components of like, well, I got to pay for things,
right,
means I got to do more, right? I don't have that safety net. So yeah, I agree. Yeah. So he's about to hit the
sucks.
He's about to hit the dollar loan center. I wonder, is that national? Did I just quote the Utah ad that nobody else knows? I don't know.
Dollar loan center. I don't know how many dollar loan centers there are, but
yeah,
try to stay away from them, friends.
How do you feel about both doing it? Do you think he should have asked for help from his friends? 8 jots is not, I mean, Sim for sure could help him with that.
Sure, it's not a lot. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
He has a reputation to maintain.
Yep.
He wants to maintain that reputation even amongst his friends.
Yeah.
Who am I to say? I'm not giving you a good answer.
It's okay. You don't have to, I guess. For me,
it's easy to say, yeah, just do it, man. You'll totally be all right with it.
I'm trying to think, like, if I, like, my best friend, like in high school or college, like, I'm not sure there was anything I wouldn't tell him. Sure. I mean, very little. But money's a weird thing. Again, complicated.
It is. It is. Yeah. It does show that there's risks he's not willing to take.
Yep.
He said he briefly considered trying to cut purse the money, but he knew it was a bad idea. Because he would eventually be expelled. Right? I couldn't risk it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is, he talks about reckless bravery or whatever, but there are limits. And
we'll like, if he can't afford tuition and get into the next semester, then
what's the point?
What's the risk of being expelled?
Yeah.
I have a question though. Like, can you come back? Can you just be like,
I got to take a semester off.
I have to take a semester off. I just don't have the money. I'm going to go, do some odd jobs, mow some lawns, I'll come back and I'll be back next semester. Like, do they allow you to do that?
I don't know. I don't know that we've seen an example of that.
But the fact that he doesn't even bring it up as an option.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess there's 2 choices. Either it doesn't exist, like you can't do that. Once you're out, or it's just indicative of how Kvothe's brain works. There is no stop. There's no back. There's no pause. It's forward always. No excuses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if that's why it doesn't come up.
If I look back, I'm lost.
That's right. Daenerys Targaryen. The beginning of this chapter starts with a little description of slow care versus stealth in approaching somebody who's a wild thing. It strikes me the main difference is just the intention. One implies that you want to surprise them and take them unaware and get some advantage, and the other one implies like an honest, open approach.
Yeah, you want to put them at ease, maybe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was just a little. I mean, Pat could have left that out and just kept going with the story, but it's a nice little view into kind of how we should view this person, right?
Yeah, not as a prize to be won.
Yeah,
or something like that.
And that he doesn't. Maybe part of the conversation we'll talk about later, but he doesn't view this person as prey to be caught.
Absolutely.
Right? He views this as someone that needs to be, taken care of and make sure they feel safe and secure and agree to how this is all happening.
Well, he's certainly taking it slow, buddy, because he says all this at the first few paragraphs and he proceeds to just talk about money.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, well, at the end of the last chapter, he says, "Okay, let's talk about the girl then. Let's do it." And he's like,
and then
before I can talk about the girl, let's talk about debt. Wait. Hold on. Set the stage. Yep.
What the heck kind of stage is this, Kvothe? Get to it. Where's the girls?
I don't have much else in this section.
Short chapter.
It is indeed. We'll move to negotiations.
Let's get to a longer chapter.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this is called negotiations. You know, Scad, Imri sounds like a place I'd like. It's a couple miles from the university, so it wasn't a college town. And it's like 2 days from Tarbine, and so it wasn't a big stinking city either. It was a haven for the arts, where musicians, actors, sculptors, poets, and others of that ilk thrived. All things seen as frivolity by those at the university, even though they came to see the performances and to be entertained. You know, you got to go to shows. You know what? Those in Imri were very wary of what was being learned at the university, even though they called upon their engineers, doctors, and others in times of need. You know, in the end, there was, as the author says, a grudging tolerance of each other, which is an interesting way to look at it, being those at the university versus those in Imri. Kvothe, as a general rule, steered clear of the city. Hearing the music and not being able to participate in it was just too much for him. But he was desperate, and he'd heard that Devi in Imri was the person anyone could ask for a loan from. As he arrived at Devi's secluded place of business down an alley and behind a butcher shop, he was surprised to find that Devi was a girl. Oh, and a pretty one at that.
Cute as a button.
Cute as a button. But she drew a hard bargain. 4 talents was the minimum she would loan at 50% interest, due by the end of the 2-month term. Kvothe blanches. He didn't need 4 talents. He needed like 1, maybe 2. And he wasn't interested in paying interest on money he didn't really need in the first place. But Devi was firm. Them's are the rules. So Kvothe asked where to sign. That's when Devi pulled out a small brown bottle and a long pin. Just a little blood, she says. Whoa, nope. Kvothe quickly deduces that Devi is actually an arcanist of sorts, or at least studied enough in the field to know what can be done with someone else's blood. Remember, listeners, what Kvothe did with Master Hem's hair, and then multiply it exponentially. Devi admits that she made Raylar before leaving the university, and that having someone's blood is just a great way to keep tabs on them. She said rarely does it come to her actually having to use it. The threat of doing so is usually sufficient to keep the debtors in line. And Devi, now seeing that she's losing Kvothe, offers to make an exception and offer, to drop the loan to 2 talents. We can do 2. That's fine. But he's adamant. No way is he giving up his blood to an arcanist. And he leaves. Dodged a bullet? Yes. Still in need of money by tomorrow? Very much so. So resigned to asking his friends for help, he's going to do what Scad and I don't want to do. He starts back to the university and passes by a pawn shop's window. He goes inside. How much for the 7-string lute? He asks. And after some haggling, where he talks the pawn shop owner down from 4 talents to just over 2, which is about all the money he had to begin with, Kvothe walks out of there with a new old lute. He then returns to Devi's, lute in hand, and tells her he'll take the 4 talents. He gives up the blood, which she seals with the promise to return to him, still sealed and unused, upon repayment of the loan. And back to the university he goes, with, as he says, money in my purse and the comforting weight of the lute strap hanging from my shoulder. It was secondhand, ugly, and had cost me dearly in money, blood, and peace of mind. I loved it like a child, like breathing, like my own right hand. And that's the end of the chapter. What a turn of events. He says he doesn't even, when he's telling this story to the chronicler, he says he doesn't even remember actually entering the pawn shop. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, he alludes to this a little bit earlier in the chapter when he talks about the fact that he went to some people playing some music and could barely tolerate it. Not having music in his life is such a detriment that it's almost like he's not himself.
Yeah.
Right? Even. And yeah, when he makes this choice to buy the lute, every single level-headed reader like myself is like, I could not be friends with this guy. You just refused a loan that would get you into school that you say is the most important thing. And now you're spending all the money you have on a lute.
And not even a great lute.
Not a great lute. Yep. It's not perfect. His negotiating style is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But it almost feels like, well, even though I'm criticizing it, it almost feels like this lute gives him the confidence to go do all the other stuff he needs to do. Yeah. Now that he's got this, the world is his oyster and he can make everything happen.
Stella got his groove back. Yeah.
Right. He marches right back to Devon. He's like, great, loan, full 4, need it, gonna pay you back, gonna be fine. Blood, fine. I got my loot. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah. I got my loot. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, he's got his groove back. I think that's a great way to put it.
He says, without my music, this is to your point, I had wandered Tarbine for years, half alive, like a crippled veteran or one of the walking dead. We talked about that in the episodes of how Kvothe lost himself for 3 years there. He attributes it to not having music in his life.
Yeah, which is, I think, a little unfair given all this time they spent on the different doors that your mind goes through of burying memories and things.
Grief.
I think a lot of that stuff in Tarbine had to do with just his brain not willing to process trauma. Sure. But perhaps it's related, right? I mean, the music would have processed the trauma. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. So, it's all probably part and parcel to the experience there in Tarbine. But I think it, not having this in his life, we have to remember it's only been since his brain woke in Tarbine, it's been 2 weeks, right? Before he gets whipped, and then it's probably another 6 weeks now when it's come to be tuition, right? So he's gone without music in his life, other than when he stole a dude's loot at the campfire that one night.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For 2+ months, 2 months and a couple weeks, maybe. And I think he's just been without it for too long and doesn't remember going into the pawn shop. It's almost just like he was compelled to do it to get a piece of himself back.
Right.
Right.
And he doesn't know how it's going to help.
Yeah.
But he knows it's going to. Or does he?
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost.
You see the writing on the wall. You see what can happen here. Right. And you start to see it in the later chapters where he talks about, I need to practice and get to a point where I'm good enough again. It sounds like he's going to start performing. He's going to start busking, for money. And that's going to be a way to make money for him. At least that's what I'm reading.
I think he gets to that point by the end of the chapters we're going to read. I'm not sure he's there yet.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. Does he
this
go
feels
into
just
this
like more like I have to be whole?
Right.
I don't think so. I don't think he went in with a plan. I think he just felt like I have to be whole. And then he's like, well, I'm whole now. Now that I'm whole, I can go take the money. I'm confident I can do it.
Right.
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 The Devi Loan Center comes through for him. How do you feel about it? That's a huge rate, like you said, 50%.
Oh, it's awful. It's awful.
It's not even just 50%. It's 50% of the original amount always.
Every term. Yeah.
So like if he pays back a talent, you'd think he just has to pay 50% out of talent.
Nope.
It's still on
2 talents every term.
Yes.
Until the loan's paid back.
Right. So
it's awful. And and she's got your blood and can kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she must really pretty much never do this. She says her clientele is university students. It would be a rumor mill all over the university if more than occasionally this went poorly, right?
Sure.
Feels like. So it's, I don't know if Kvothe came to that conclusion or not, but I did, and he's smarter than me. So, maybe he just kind of said, this is probably just going to be fine.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't seem fine. He does seem still very nervous about it in the oncoming chapters.
Right.
Even the next two that we're going to cover here. So.
Poor Kvothe.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Right before he goes into that pawn shop, he says, even as I tried to talk myself into it, which was borrowing money, I knew the truth. It was a bad idea. But then he goes into a pawn shop and buys a lute.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing I love about Kvothe, and that I wish I was better at. And that is this: betting on yourself. I am not good at betting on myself.
Agreed. Yeah,
I'm pretty terrible at it. And I'm ashamed to say that. Kvothe bets on himself all the time.
It's all he's got.
And I mean, it's kept him alive to this point.
Yeah.
And I love that about him. Like you said, I'm whole now. I can move forward.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah,
it's almost like, is it that idea of put your mask on first in the airplane, the oxygen mask on first before you can help other people?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got to be whole first.
Yeah. Couldn't have done it without the loot, period.
Right.
Doesn't matter whether I took the loan or not. It didn't matter without the loot.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be me first.
Right.
Yeah, like from a storytelling perspective, it's a little hard to read for me because it's like, well, you did go without it for 2 months. You were living, you had friends. It was kind of okay. But I like it. I mean, I know where the story goes, so I guess I'm biased. But it looks like a really bad decision.
Sure.
Not willing to take a 2-talent loan to get what you need, waste your money, then go back for double the amount that you were going to be able to get. It seems really bad. But if it allows him to move forward better than cope, that's probably a long-term win.
Right.
We're going to see very soon.
We are going to see very soon. I was just, it's interesting. I was just talking to a buddy at work today.
Yeah.
And this guy, great dude, such a great dude. Married for, I think, about 20 years and just recently divorced, and is kind of living a new life. And he attributes to, people have said to him, like, you just look happier, like you walk with your head held a little higher. You're just like brimming with confidence. What happened? And he goes,
Lute.
Honestly, he said he pulls up his sleeve and he's got a tattoo on his wrist. Mm-hmm. And he goes, it was this tattoo, this one right here. And they said, and it's like, what do you mean? He goes, this was the first thing that I did for me, just because I wanted to, in 20 years or whatever. It's the first thing I did for me. And that carries with it like a weightlessness almost. It carries a weightlessness.
It floats
maybe
a weightlessness ahead of it.
Think your words, Matt. Think your words. But you know what I mean? Like it awakened something in him. It was something that he did just for him, and it made him complete again and gave him that momentum that he needed to find that new lease on life, to where he was taking care of himself, and that allowed him to succeed in other areas of life too. So
it's a big thing, right? Realizing that you're not taking care of yourself and finding what you think it is to even, I mean, some people struggle to even know what that is.
Right.
To know what it would even mean to take care of themselves. myself, I order a delicious chili verde burrito every week.
It's a start.
And that's something I do for me.
Uh-huh.
It's probably not enough. But it seems like a small thing. It's like that the tattoo changed your life. Well,
it's not even that cool of a tattoo, man.
It's what the tattoo resembled in what he recognized about his needs, right?
Right. Yeah. And then taking that and building on it, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And,
right.
Yeah, allowing it to mean something and propel him along emotionally. So.
But back to the chili verde burritos, because
that sounds awesome. I want a chili verde burrito right now.
It's right by your house. Oh. It's on 78th South. And sorry, I'm about to tell
you gonna dox me?
Well, it's not exactly. They have like thousands of houses to choose from.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Yeah. It's
Is it between Redwood and 13th?
It's between Redwood and no, the other way, west of you.
Oh, okay. All right.
If you came out, yeah. Okay. We'll talk.
All right.
It's delicious.
I love me a good burrito. So.
There are many closer Mexican places to where I am, and I go to this place because it's good.
It's good.
Yeah. Let's see if they're open.
I love Mexican food so much, and it makes me so sick.
Oh yeah, awful. But... yeah, really bad. Yeah.
Nothing leads to more like just surefire regret for me than eating Mexican food. It is so good going in and so bad after everything after that initial going in.
Well, then maybe I won't send you the location of this place. No, welcome everyone to the Davos Fingers podcast, where we talk about Mexican food regularly.
And the Goo Goo Dolls and how aggressive we get in our rec league sports.
In sports. That I haven't played for 10 years.
One thing I love about Kvothe, Scad, is he's both sides of this university and Imre rivalry.
Yes.
That's cool, man. What a well-balanced individual.
He's of course he is, because he's perfect.
Guy. Yeah. He's so perfect.
Yeah.
And he's also dabbling in the dark arts that are taught at the university, according to, Imre's populace.
If he's so perfect. If there was also a third town that was a sports town, I'm sure he'd find a way to fit in there.
He'd be in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I bet he's good at pickleball.
My kids are getting into pickleball.
Everyone's into pickleball.
I'm not. I will be the last holdout. Pawnee and Eagleton, I have a note. Oh, for Imre and the university, maybe? Like they just kind of hate each other. Except Pawnee and Eagleton, they don't get along at all, really, do they? So no. It's not really exactly the same.
Right.
Yeah. I have the, by
the way, one where they come together and he's like, Pawnee and Eagleton. How do I describe this? Pawnee is just have no money. You're just so have no money or something like that.
Yeah. Your summary put it almost exactly the way I have it in my notes. Imre sounds just like the place to be.
Sure. It sounds awesome.
Art, trades, well-kept lawns, technology. They've got everything you need.
Yeah.
It sounds like exactly what you want to be.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. Yeah.
I'm going to buy land there.
Yeah.
You can go travel with the Roo. I'm going to just... Yeah.
Well, the Roo life really does sound pretty great. So simple. Land ownership, Matt. We've all been fooled. All right. Move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Tar and Tin. Chapter 51. Kvothe has risen in the ranks of the fishery, his hard work and dedication earning him the right to study sigilry with Kvothe, which Kvothe describes as sympathy made solid. Essentially, it is use of runes that have power within them to perform sympathetic bindings on solid objects. There were 197 runes, and learning how they fit together to have an effect was like learning a new language. While it took most students a month to learn it, Kvothe did it in 7 days because he's Kvothe and because he got lucky. But on this night, Kvothe has decided to squeeze in some Lute practice before making his way to the fishery. He's found a nice, secluded, overgrown courtyard that is the perfect place for him to practice. And on this night, he does it from one of the buildings that overlook that courtyard. He was halfway through 10 Tap Tim, a song he knows well, when he hears a rustling in the hedges and a vaguely metallic thud. He investigates the hedge, which is quite large and big enough for a person to lay down in. But there is no one hiding in there, nor does it appear anyone slipped out of the windows of the buildings that surrounded the courtyard. So he pushes through the hedge, and there he finds a metal grate that appears to be locked by 2 runes of chivalry, Ule and Dyok. He quickly composes a song to the tune of 10 Tap Tim that help him memorize some of the last runes that he needed to move on in the fishery. As he stands up to leave, Kvothe's hand is placed on an apple. Despite there being no apple tree anywhere near this particular spot, the apple tree happens to be on the other side of the courtyard. This apple must have been carried. A good deduction. After passing his chivalry test with the help of the song, Kvothe was apprenticed under Mene, friend and student of nearly 30 years at the university. Mene was patient and considerate and no nonsense, teaching Kvothe the basics and moving on to more complicated projects in no time. But time was still actually the problem. The high-paying levels for artificing work still eluded him, and time was running out for him to make the 6 talents he would owe Devi. 2, just an interest. And that's the end of the chapter. Kind of a little weird, updatey chapter.
It's a weird one, Scat. It's him. It's a little bit of world building. We learn about how awful runing is. I don't even know why it's a thing. It sounds terrible.
I think it sounds awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Sounds great. You carve little symbols into the stuff and it makes them do things. Then you have to change
this symbol to make this do this. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but it's like you said, it's like a language. Once you know how to do, you don't think about how you write a sentence, really. You just write it. He knows how the symbols work. Maybe you make some mistake every now and then. You got to fix it up or whatever, but no big deal.
Right.
I think it's cool. It's the mechanical engineering version of magic, right?
It really is. Yeah.
There's like super magic, which is naming. There's, sympathy, which is like the fake magic that Kvothe doesn't appreciate that he learned from Ben, about making the jots the same or what we've seen him do in his classes. And then there's this, which is like, let's turn the magic into like marketable objects.
Right.
It's cool. You don't like it. All right. That's fine. You can disagree.
Let me just say, the idea of it is cool. The idea of me doing it is not
you
super
want to just
appealing to me.
Live in Imra and buy these projects is what you want to do.
Listen, I would totally just be the Imra guy being like, hey, university, toilet's clogged again. You send a plumber out. That's
yeah.
And I don't want to know how they do it. Just fix it. I'm gonna go play my lute.
Hey, university, I need a new lamp that glows.
Yeah.
Excellent. We have these different options. I don't care. I just need a lamp that glows.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to playing my lute now. You have 2-day shipping? All right.
Great. I really like the way he puts it. Sympathy made solid, right? It's taking these components of magical elements that they understand and turning them into solid objects that can be used and maintained. I love that, the way of thinking about that.
Is it something that anybody could do? Like if anyone was just able to get a key to all the different runes, could they potentially be doing magic with them?
It's a good question. I don't know. It feels like it seems like it. To be honest, it seems like if you just had, your cheat sheet and you knew which things to do, you'd probably make a lot of mistakes or whatever. Mm-hmm. But to some degree, it feels like maybe something you could teach yourself over time. You'd screw up a lot, right? And be costly as you ruin the materials and stuff as you went. But it's like, maybe it's kind of like teaching yourself automotive mechanics, right? It's like,
that's true. Different
you're going to
cars
screw up
different things.
Yeah, you're going to screw up a bunch, but you get manuals and you can learn it probably. I don't mean to diminish those technicians because they're how brilliant and they know. Yeah, it's very complicated. You don't know what you're doing. I mean, yeah. All I tried to do was change a battery in my RAV4 a few months ago. And the number of things I had to remove and take off to even get access to the battery, it took me 3 hours, man, to change a battery in my RAV4 to get access to it and get rid of it. It was insane.
Yeah, I can understand that completely.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's one thing that helps Kvothe about the sigilry stuff. He doesn't need the cheat sheet because he has music. Music becomes his cheat sheet, and he uses music to help memorize all this stuff. And it really is like, that's such a good cheat. I still remember from, 8th grade when we learned the Africa song. I can still sing it. I can still sing that song, Matt, with no practice.
The Africa song.
Cape Verde, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. You didn't learn this?
I did not learn that.
I thought every kid in Utah learned this. Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, and Chad, and Niger, Mali. Really? You don't know this thing?
I'm looking at you with the most incredulous face because I never learned the Africa song. I did learn 50 nifty United States.
Oh, sure.
Alabama, indeed. Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut.
Right. I remember that one.
Yeah.
I remember that one. I also learned the world song from the Animaniacs, which I still know most of, right?
Wow.
And it's just amazing how our brains work like that. Like, you set it to music and you can remember it like basically forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird. Mm-hmm. It's weird.
Weird and beautiful. Yeah.
Like, I can understand biologically how we evolved to do a lot of things. I don't understand how music became an unlocking mechanism for memory.
It really is. It's like our bodies and our minds are attuned to melody, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
It is. It is. I'm going to get weirded out if I keep thinking about it.
All right. Let's talk about something else. Still don't know who the girl is, unless it's Debbie.
The girl? Oh, well, we haven't been introduced to it yet, right?
We're like unless 2 chapters after he said he was going to tell us about her, and
here we are. It could be Debbie.
It could be.
It could be Debbie.
That was my first thought. But he never said like, this is the girl.
No,
Debbie.
No.
So that's what made me wonder.
She is on his mind. He's constantly thinking about her and how she'll kill him if he doesn't pay her.
Yeah. What kind of on your mind is it though? Yeah.
Just the kind of relationship you want from the leading lady in your story.
Uh-huh.
What do you think about this courtyard that he's found to play in?
So cool. I wish I had one.
Yeah, I didn't do a great job in the summary. It's essentially completely walled off.
Yeah.
And you've got to like climb a building or climb out a window to find it. Like, you can't, there's no way in there unless you are Kvothe and don't care about rules and just go exploring.
Yeah, it's a guy who's lived in the street for 3 years. He's going to be able to find these, but your usual university student isn't even going to look for it.
It's overgrown. It's not maintained. This hedge is giant. And apparently there's somebody in there. So it seems like that carries apples.
No sigildry. Yeah.
To grates and no sigildry.
At least a bit of it.
Yeah.
It sounds awesome. Just like you always want to have your own little hiding place,
your
like
own
your
little spot.
Fort.
Yeah.
Place to just call your
little
own
getaway. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. I want one.
Short little chapter. I don't have much else here other than Manet is awesome. My appreciation for Manet goes up every time I read this book. He just seems like no nonsense, but also not overly serious.
He's patient, considerate. He's described. Reminds him of Ben. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway. Anything else for this one?
Nope.
Move on to Burning, chapter 52. This is a longer one. He meant the world to Kvothe to have a lute and music back in his life, but he was out of practice, and it took him weeks to get back to being really comfortable playing. If he could spend more time, it could have come faster, but Kvothe is a busy man these days. And as stated in the previous summary, his time to pay back his loan is running out. Between the Medica, lectures, and his apprenticeship to learn sigildry in the fishery, he had a committed 7 hours a day. But he also had 3 hours of advanced sympathy class with Oxidal And when you added in his project work at the fishery, where he could make some dough, he barely had time to eat and sleep. The music itself was hard to squeeze in, let alone enough to get good quickly. But he did, and over time, his body paid the price. He really wore down, and his friends were starting to notice. Kvothe had been neglecting his friends to keep his crazy schedule. The will, Kvothe appeared to be sick, while Sim insisted he was lovesick with a pretty girl across the river in Imra. Kvothe was embarrassed to tell them how hard up he was for money. He didn't have much, but he had his pride. And the truth was, he wasn't likely to pay Devi back and still afford tuition next term anyway. He was likely to be out of the university after just 2 terms. But his explanation of being busy falls on some pretty deaf ears. Sim, still thinking he's spending all his time with a girl, is deeply hurt by the lack of time he gets. They were all busy, he argued. You still had to prioritize your friends, even over girls sometimes. When Kvothe insists there is no girl, Will gets closer to the mark. We all bite off too much sooner or later, but some students don't know when to spit their mouth full. They burn out, they quit, or botch their exams. Some crack. It usually happens in the first year. Kvothe resists that. He thinks this is not the case. But Will tells him to look in the mirror as Kvothe rushes off to advanced sympathy. In that advanced sympathy class, they learn about fire, the most common form of energy for a sympathist to use. It's academic, but in this class, they also learn to use it. They regularly do battle against each other via sympathy, so they can defend themselves against other arcanists when they go out into the real world. It is an opportunity for Kvothe to get his ego stroked, since he's yet again the best student in the class, of course, but also for him to earn a little bit of money. Elxadal looks the other way while students bet on the duels. Today, Kvothe is battling the second-place student, Fenton, a real threat to his undefeated streak, Kvothe thinks. Further risk added, since today, Kvothe has a trick up his sleeve to improve the betting odds against him. He has given Savoy all the money he has, 2 jots, and asks him to bet it all on him after the duel is set. By using poor components, straw in this case, to act as a link to candles, instead of the wick that Fenton has, which is a much closer link, the students will see that he has a big disadvantage and bet against him, despite how good he always is. This will improve how much he makes if he should win. But at the announcement of this poor link, Fenton plays it smart and asks for no energy source. All they will have to draw from is their own body heat. Both couldn't win, he knew it. So he immediately set his strategy to defense, distraction, and obfuscation. He focuses all his energy on making sure Fenton could not light his own candle, and focused little energy on trying to light Fenton's candle. But something strange was starting to happen. While Kvothe was growing clammy, his arms were getting cold, Fenton seemed to be taking it worse. He was twitching, his eyes glossing over, and his hand tremored. He passed out on the table with the chills. Fenton's candle lit up as his defense dropped to 0, and Kvothe willed it to light despite the weak link. Fenton had drawn his own blood to try and use it as a heat source to light the candle, but wasn't successful, and the effects were dangerous. After using blankets, sympathy, and actual medicine to warm Fenton up, the class got 2 last lessons from Elxadal. First, be careful with blood. The blood, when used as a source of heat, chills the whole body as a unit rather than sections like Kvothe felt in his arms. And the body is warm for a reason. It doesn't want to lose several degrees of body temperature throughout. Second, better to know your honest limit than overguess your abilities and lose control. Turns out if they hadn't been there to help, apparently Fenton would have fallen asleep and died. Fenton's mistake nearly cost him his life, but it earned Kvothe 2 talents, and his poor link had given him an 11-to-1 odds against to allow that. Money in his pocket, but he returns to the Muse after being turned away at the fishery. Apparently Will and Sim, the good friends that they are, had spoken to Kilvin about Kvothe's state, and he was temporarily banned from his work in the fishery. Nobody wanted him to crack. He was furious at first, but he played some music, calmed down, realized that he wasn't going to make enough tuition working there anyway. So how he would solve this problem? Tell me everything you know about the Aeolian, he demands from his friends. And that's the end of the chapter.
Wait till next time, Khalasar, to even find out what that is.
That's correct, the Aeolian.
Another example of Kvothe betting on himself literally, right?
Yeah, literally.
Ballsy.
Yeah, and I didn't include it in my summary, but he was given the short stick there. Usually he would have been able to choose the source, and for some reason Elksdal, I guess just because he's so good, he decided to let Fenton also choose the source.
Right, yeah.
So it kind of screwed him up. But yeah, bet everything he had and played defense, and I still don't really get how the math works. I don't really get how he could get if he says in the chapter, I think he's only going to get like 3% energy transfer. So if he takes even 100 degrees from his body, he'd get 3 degrees to the candle. I don't know how that starts a fire, but
yeah, or of the total. Yeah,
I don't really get it. Maybe
you just have
like,
to work harder for less. You kind of just have to, like, keep it there. You have to work super hard for not a lot.
Yeah. If I ever meet Pat, I'll ask him that question though. Maybe not. I'm sure there are better questions to ask.
He'll be like, "Moo."
Maybe. He seems really into like the science side of this stuff.
For real, dude. The fact that he even came up with this whole way of doing things is just pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Good friends sometimes do things for you that you can't do for yourself.
Absolutely.
Kvothe would have never made that choice for himself. He would have cracked first for sure.
And interesting that he needed the music to become whole, yet it was also contributing to the cracking because it was one more thing on his list of things he had to do.
Yeah. But he didn't have to. If he didn't need it to be whole,
didn't have to.
If he didn't want to become if he didn't want to, he could have slept, but he wanted to feel whole, right? So he added it. But yeah, drop something, man. Drop a couple credit hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good friends.
You'd think, yeah, good friends. Good friends. It's almost like they don't know the whole story, right? He hasn't been completely open to them.
Yeah.
In terms of explaining his situation and where he is. And that's also what a good friend does, is they don't force that and they still support you. It's like, we know something's going on here.
Yeah.
We know that your life and your road to hoe is a lot more difficult than what ours is.
Yep.
And you're not ready to tell us about that yet. And that's okay. We're still just going to support you. It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
In this case, they did a little more than support. They meddled.
We're going to proactively support. Meddle.
Which, you wonder if Kvothe had been honest to them about the money, they might not have. They'd have been like, he needs the money. We can't get in the way of this or something.
Or maybe we should donate them. He wouldn't even have to ask.
Maybe.
They'd just be like,
they'd probably just give
it to you. Yeah.
It's probably true. Yeah.
But then again, they probably know by now of his intense pride.
Yes.
And how that would make him feel.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit earlier about the number of students at the university. It says in this chapter that about 100 people leave every year.
Mm-hmm.
About 25 leave with their guilders, as like full-fledged arcanists, which means like 75 flunk out or choose to go or whatever.
Right.
And we know there are 1,500 students enrolled at a time. So some basic math tells me, you're like, the average student is there for like 15 years. Right? If 100 leave every year.
For whatever reason.
I mean, it's got to be more than that, actually, because lots of them are going to make it 5 or 6 years and then leave, or 3 years and then leave. So the ones that actually make it, they're staying 15, 20 years. Right? I come in at 20.
I think so.
If only 100 leave, you wouldn't expect me to leave yet after my first year or my second year.
Right.
I don't know. It's all fuzzy math, but like I think they're there for a
Fuzzy.
long time is my point. This is not like a 2 or 3, 4 year commitment. This is like you're there for a bit.
Totally. And it's so far we haven't seen any sort of standardization, like in terms of a 4-year degry, a bachelor's degree. So yeah, it's like, as far as I can infer, it's like you study until you're ready, like however long it happens to take you.
And ready for what? Right? Like I feel like
what are you going out and
both could probably leave now and go do sigildry for a living.
Right.
I mean, he could go to any town anywhere and make products for people through sigildry that would easily see him live a content life.
And I think we see people doing that, right? Potentially.
I don't know. I feel like we should see people doing that if we're sending 25 of them or more out every year. Seems
they
like
go and they kind of use what they have to eke out a living, maybe to various degrees of success.
Yeah. But like the town his Rue troops stopped at, where they didn't want to let them play in the let them play in the town center, right?
Right.
Probably they should have had a guy there. Some guy would have wandered through and been like, "Oh, you don't have a guy to make you lamps and do the things? I'll do that here. Sure.
I can do that."
You know? Anyway, just I like thinking about these things as a component of how the world works, right?
Right.
What are these 25 that leave every year go do?
Right.
Like, are they teachers like Abinthy? Like they just go teach rich kids' sons stuff, or they become,
or they go about, because Abinthy kind of started out peddling things, kind of like,
maybe they become
medicine or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me.
And it makes you wonder, like, is it worth it?
Well, that's a whole different question. Do they go there with a goal? Like, I'm going to study 8 years and I'm going to learn these things and then I'm going to leave and I'm going to do this. Or is it like, I want to learn more and I don't know.
Right.
Which is how I went to college. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it's a long chapter. I don't have a ton of notes on it. A lot of that chapter involves the battle, which is fun to read, but I don't know that there's a ton of talking points unless you want to get into like the depths of sympathy, which, we could. Sometimes I struggle with the rules, like I said, I don't know how he summons enough energy to actually light the candle. But they do talk, I didn't cover earlier in my summary, but they break their mind into 2 parts. Right, one to attack the other person's
focus on offense,
one to defend their own, and it's interesting.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those where you kind of almost just have to accept it after a minute.
Yeah,
and go.
He did it. In the Star Wars books we're reading.
He did it. Yep.
You mean they swung through the gravitic anomaly, and then I'm like, okay, fine, it just happened.
Okay, fine. They weren't completely off base, Will and Sim, when they talked about the girl taking up all his time. I would just say that the girl is music.
The muse. Yeah. It's a good it's a good pull right there. It wasn't taking all his time, but it was taking, you're right. It kind of feels like it was the thing that pushed him over to not having enough time to sleep and stuff, right?
You spend time with it. Yeah, it was a couple hours a day, right? That he was doing it. And I mean, it's a couple hours back that could be having lunch with your friends and chilling out a little bit.
But part of me thinks if he could have just lasted that like one more week, probably could have started practicing less. He'd get it back. He'd have his groove back. Probably could, give some time back to his friends and sleep.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not a musician. I don't know, but it feels that way.
Feels that way.
Yeah. So he's now got a money problem. I mean, he had a money, kind of what he comes to terms with at the end of his chapters. He had a money problem anyway. He was not going to make enough to pay Devi back and to pay for tuition. Right. And so he's like, well, them getting me kicked out of the fishery didn't change much. I've got to come up with a different plan.
Right.
So now we wait with bated breath for the next set of chapters to see if he comes up with a plan.
Yeah. Completely, again, all these chapters from the moment his parents died have been the hero's journey, but also subverting the hero's journey a little bit of like, you can go on a hero's journey and it's going to cost you.
But money.
Like not
you
like
gotta
cost
eat, remember?
you like it's a sacrifice. It's a significant financial cost that we're talking about here. Yep.
Yeah.
And I love that Rothfuss does that. It's maddening. It's frustrating. It's like I'm constantly just like feeling this pressure for Kvothe of like, how's he going to pay for this? How's he going to pay for this? But it's also real. And
I remember, I can't remember who it was, but I remember seeing on Twitter, somebody said, I just can't handle that book. It gives me too much anxiety. Like reading about him struggling with money like this.
I get it. Yeah.
I just can't handle it. And so they had to stop reading it. I can't remember who that was now. If you're listening, you won't be because you didn't read the books. But tell me who you were.
Yeah.
You ready for some Devi?
I think so.
Devi Loan Center.
All right. Oh, I guess we should intro it a little bit. If guys, if you don't want to be spoiled, like we said at the top of the podcast, turn it off now because we're going to get into spoilers. But join us next time. We're going to have some more fun. Aeolian. We're going to learn a little bit more about that.
Aeolian. I think we will. Yeah.
And maybe we'll even find out who the girl is if we haven't already. I don't know. It's taking his sweet time, but we'll get there.
Taking 5 chapters at least.
All right, here we go. Devi After Dark. Devi After Dark.
Do you want to start with that? Do you want to start with, is the woman Denna?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like she's the one that's enchanted him the most to this point.
Yeah. There's a few things in favor of it being Denna. I mean, the way he has talked about her already makes it seem like he's still a lovesick puppy about her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's either a pretty big troll job, right, by him to mislead us, or it's her. He also does treat her very much like the slow care that we talked, slow care versus stealth that we talked about, which is a sign, that he treats her that way in the future, right? He's just very careful not to overcommit his feelings or give her too many compliments or do anything that he thinks might frighten her off. He treats her very much like a slow care thing, which alludes to the fact that it might be her. But the big strike against it is linguistic, or in the text it says she's about to get her cue to come onto the stage as if we haven't met her already.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we've met Denna already. So honestly, I didn't really think about it until I saw your note. Yeah, it maybe Denna's a distraction, and Devi is heavily involved in the story going forward in this book and the next one.
Sure. Yeah.
And maybe that is who we're talking. Maybe that is who we should be talking about. Right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I prefer Devi. She's fun.
She's really fun. Do you think he approaches her with that same amount of care that he, kicks this whole thing off with in that Silence of a Different Kind chapter?
He approaches her with care for himself, right? He doesn't want her to take advantage of him or, agree to some bad terms or have his blood. It doesn't feel like he approaches her with much care other than for himself, not about startling her. Devi is a very self-assured person that knows her place and what she's doing and doesn't seem like she needs, she's the predator. right? Not the prey. So
that's true.
You don't need to worry about startling her. You need to worry about her startling you.
She's the one you approach slowly, but in like a way of like, don't bite me.
Self-preservation.
You know what I
mean? Yeah. It's an interesting thought though, because he does say we're going to introduce her, right?
Right.
And
here she is.
Yeah. And she plays a prominent role, and they, without going into too much detail, they kind of fuck each other over a little bit. And that's more interesting than what we get with his relationship with Denna to some. That relationship changes in A Wise Man's Fear as well. His relationship with Denna becomes more contentious, and there's some conflict in there that's very real for the plot of the story. And so it does evolve, but his relationship with Devi is certainly more interesting, right? To me.
Yeah. And hey, that's what matters.
Just my opinion.
What's interesting to you? What's interesting to you?
Such a wonderful world it would be. That's all that mattered. Only what I care about.
If only. A lot of the, I think, Devi After Dark meat is found in that first chapter that we covered, right?
Yeah.
So much there.
Yep.
Eladin's door that's made of copper.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
Yeah.
Yeah. His place in the Rookery, his standing now amongst you called him an activist. I love that idea. How did he get to that point? All things of the Ever-Changing Wind chapter. What do you got?
Well, sure. Let's start with Elodin, and then we can get to. I think the copper stuff is maybe copper's shown up in this story several times. I don't know if the readers always pick up on it or not, but it's shown up a lot. We'll kind of touch on some of that, but let's start with Elodin. How did he leave? Well, I think he says in this chapter that he broke down the walls. He tries to do the same thing and it doesn't work. So I think he left by force, but he was in there for, he says, 2 years. Right? So like he either learned the name of the thing to break down the wall over 2 years and it took him time to learn it somehow. And let's be clear, I don't think we have any idea how learning naming works. I can't remember reading anything in A Wise Man's Fear about it either. It's just kind of like after enough exposure and studying something, you kind of know it. It's weird, right? I don't think we got a lot of detail.
There's that part where he's like, "Oh, this has changed." When he's about to call the name of some of it and it doesn't work, and he's like, "Oh, this has changed," and he has to think about it for a few minutes, and then got it, da-da-da. And boom.
Basilian. Yeah.
So it's almost like you're able to deduce it through studying or just thinking through it, but it's a thought process that has to be learned.
Yeah.
And
there's some interesting thoughts about that word and what it means, like just looking at like the roots of words and things like that. Kyra Basilian, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. Of course, I've never listened to the audiobook. But it could be that the Sire could mean blue copper. Means, and I got this from a wiki entry, means related, connected to, and basal is like basalt, like a type of stone.
Oh yeah,
a very hard stone.
Okay.
So you're talking about like blue copper with stone, and that's what we have with that wall. And then even the N, like the basal doesn't take care of the N at the end, but N as a suffix can mean within. So it could be like blue copper related to basalt within, right? Because there's like copper weaved within it, right?
He's able to put those together and put it all together. Yeah, so it's like it almost like sigildry. Once you know things, you could put them together with linking verbs and know the name. Or is it just he had to remember the name because he knows the name of walls infused with copper, which would be kind of weird.
I wouldn't think you'd come across that a lot in nature and have had time to study it, right? So it almost feels like it is just a language, and that you can combine names to make the new names of things, right? It's a little weird. Most of the things we have don't feel like they're names for combinations of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I would also say, to that point, when he calls it, the iron isn't affected. Or sorry, the copper isn't affected.
It's the stuff around it.
The wall comes down, but the copper is still there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that argument is like the Kyrie Basalian doesn't have anything to do with the copper, right? Which leads to what most people think, from what I've read, is that copper doesn't actually have a name. It can't be named, or it doesn't have a name. No one's found it, or it doesn't exist. Or maybe even some people think that it had a name and it's been taken from it, like Haliax or somebody took the name away to rob it of its power for some reason.
Would explain the door.
Well, right. So where is copper? It's all over the place, right? We have the Loden's door. It's the material that's used for the four-plated door in the archive.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the 3 locks on the box that Kvothe has in his room in the inn, which means he's...
Good point. Yep.
Well,
good callback.
A lot of the theories say copper is protection against namers. That's why the door is made out of copper. That's why they infused copper webbing into the wall, because they think it'll keep him from getting out, right? And because he doesn't have any power to name it or anything to affect it. Same with the lock on the box. If he has 2 locks of other kinds, but he knows namers will just blow through those, he can use a copper one to make sure namers can't get in, right? That's kind of the idea for that. So I will say Pat mentioned 2 things in interviews and stuff. One reader sent him a copper knife, saying in case he needed to kill a namer. And Pat replied, "These guys have been reading closely." And so it's more evidence, right? That copper is a good weapon against namers, because they can't name it. They can't control it.
Right.
He also said,
interesting.
A pair of copper dice is exactly what you need if you ever have to gamble against a namer.
Okay. Yeah, that about does it for me.
Yeah. It feels like it's... we don't know whether it never had a name or no one's ever discovered it, or just so few people know it that it's a good resource against namers.
Yeah. What makes copper special?
Right. And we don't really know. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it certainly seems like it is. And there's, you can go find all sorts of theories about copper. But there's, I did some thinking about it, and copper and iron don't mix well, like alchemically. When combined, the iron really suffers. We know the period... It's getting a little weird, okay? But like, we know the periodic symbol for iron is Fe. We know 2 characters who are Fae or Chandrian, called Felurian and Ferula. Ferula is actually Cinder's name. Remember Cinder, the guy with the black eyes?
Okay.
So Felurian and Ferula are 2 creatures that we've met. And we know that the Fae are kind of allergic to iron. We know that copper and iron don't mix well. I don't know exactly what to draw from it. Like, perhaps copper is an element meant to combat them, to like limit their power.
Sure.
But also we know that iron does that too. They don't want to touch iron. So it's not a perfect theory, but I don't know. It's just some things I noticed.
A song of copper and iron.
Yes. A song of copper, iron, and wind. Yeah. I guess, back to Elodin again. I think, we know, I don't remember where we learned this, but we know that he was chancellor before.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it took place about 5 years before Kvothe started at the university.
Mm-hmm.
And we know from this chapter that he was in the rookery for 2 years, right? And so it's likely, that he was chancellor 5 years ago, went a little bit crazy, right? Got cracked, went for 2 years to the rookery, and then got out, and then kind of got back in the good graces and became a master again. So it might be that the reason they hold him in such deference is because before he cracked, he was the highest ranking dude at the whole place.
Sure.
And so they're like, well, yeah, he's the master. Of course I'm going to respect him. Of course I fear him. He used to be in charge of everything, right? And maybe it's just a little awkward with how to treat him now.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's part of it, for sure. What we see, maybe not from the other masters as much, but what we see in this chapter from the guys that work there is not just deep and abiding respect, but fear.
They're afraid. Yeah.
They're afraid of him.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go
something.
I don't want to go too sinister.
Yeah.
But that's where my mind does go. Did something happen?
Yeah.
I don't know, because it seems like they're not treating him with kid gloves necessarily either. Like, we need to be careful around this guy or he's going to lose it.
But there is very much a palpable concern or hesitancy to
it's like a yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right away, sir. I'm sorry, sir.
They don't want to disappoint this guy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to make of it yet.
Yeah. It does feel like something happened to affect these people, right? They dealt with him somehow. That
more than just blowing a hole in the wall and saying, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have anything, but I think I agree with you. It feels like there's more there, right? So he's chancellor. He goes crazy. He's in there for 2 years. Something happens in those 2 years. He breaks out. Maybe like breaking out, they try to stop him and something happens.
Maybe.
Yeah. That also
and
feels
maybe
like,
that's why he's kind of like, don't lock people in. Like to someone like Alder Wynn, he's going to resort to the same things I resorted to.
Yeah.
And people could get
Somebody's going to get hurt. Yeah. And that's
I don't know.
The advocate thing coming back, right?
Yeah, that just came to me just now. Almost like I'm looking at, before I looked at it from the sense of, you got to take care of this guest,
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at it as like, I'm looking out for you guys. Like, I'm trying to protect you. I don't want the same thing to happen.
Right. I also think, there may have been a period, because 5 years ago, before Kvothe started, he was the master, then 2 years locked away. There's 3 years there for some other stuff to happen. And I wonder if he still wasn't really well. We get hints. We highlighted these earlier when he was on the horns, and I think when Kvothe was on the horns, and when he was having his first interview, that the chancellor kind of makes a couple of mistakes. One of the mistakes is he says, all eight of us are here. And then he's like, 9, strike that, 9 of us. It makes me think that Elodin only was recently re-added, right? So he's gotten into the habit of it just being 8. And he still has the extra half vote too, that he keeps counting, even though it's like, well, do we need that with 9 people? We probably don't. And so what did Elodin do in that time before he got added back, right?
Yeah. What did he do? Cool.
Good
mystery.
Questions. Well, we're asking a lot of questions and not answering them here, but it's been a lot of that with this series, man. There's a lot. I feel like he does a good job of obfuscating a lot of the stuff. There's theories out there if you go look. It's interesting, comparing it to A Song of Ice and Fire, which is where you and I started. the online community for that is like, it's slower now for sure, but it's vibrant comparatively, right? Like it's recent. People are still talking about it, posting stuff.
Yeah,
Most of
thorough.
the right, and very thorough. Most of the stuff for this book, the forums you find and things like that, they're posts from 2015 and 2013, and they're older. And I wonder if the show, the Game of Thrones TV show, kind of kept that revitalized. And
Probably.
without that, the Kingkiller fandom is just kind of, I don't want to say it doesn't exist, but like it's just a little more dormant.
Yeah.
Right?
Dormant. I like dormant. It's not stale.
Yeah.
It's dormant. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But there's a lot out there if you go look. I mean,
right. Some really good stuff.
Yeah.
Some great minds out there. Yeah. We do this to ourselves by picking book series that aren't finished. You know that.
I love it.
Yep. Here we are.
Yeah.
Well, I know we had a couple more things on our list. Is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I think those are the more important things that we hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, should we call this one? What a great little episode this has been.
Let's call it.
Let us call it. Okay. Let's sign off.
Want to sign off? All right,
yeah.
Let's do it.
I'll sign off with a quote. I believe it's from Kvothe. Matt signing off, reminding you that only fools and priests are never afraid. That's not true.
And Bast, apparently. It's been in my head for the last 2 hours. Devi Loan Center, Devi Loan Center, Devi Loan Center. That's it. That's my sign off.
That's a great one. That's
a great one ever.
Yep. Send it to her. All right. Good night,
Thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah.
Bye.